I worked 17 years to own my condo. My sister walked in and said, "Mom and Dad agreed, you can move out." Weeks later, police cuffed her outside my door. 10 days after I had paid off my apartment, my sister arrived up and stated that our parents had consented to allow her family move in. She expected me to go and find another place. I'm 34, unmarried, no kids, and I work in IT. My parents reside 25 minutes away in the same suburb where we grew up. My sister Lauren is 30, married to Ethan, has an 18-month-old baby. She was always the one teachers adored, the one neighbors complimented. I was the one mowing lawns in summer while Lauren got to focus on academics. My parents didn't mean to pick favorites, but if something broke, it was somehow my responsibility. If Lauren needed aid, the whole family moved mountains. I had just finished paying off my condo 3 months earlier, a 2-bedroom property in Chicago. Nothing special, but it was mine. Every inch of it has a tale. The used fridge that grumbled every time it kicked on. The inexpensive dining table I'd constructed improperly, so it wobbled if you leaned on it. The closet I transformed into a modest office because I couldn't afford a bigger home with a genuine one. For years this apartment was the finish line I limped toward. I missed holidays, drove a car old enough to vote, learned to fix leaking sinks from YouTube instead of contacting plumbers. My pals went to bars on weekends. I performed DoorDash after work for additional income. And when the bank received the letter declaring mortgage paid in full, I placed it on my fridge with a silly magnet shaped like a cow. It seemed like the biggest triumph of my life. So, when my sister Lauren appeared up out of nowhere that Tuesday afternoon, I assumed maybe she came to congratulate me. She doesn't normally visit alone. Most times, if she's in the neighborhood, she drags our parents or her husband Ethan with her. But this time, there was just her standing at my doorway carrying a huge iced coffee, looking like she owned the house already. "Hey," I murmured, stepping back. She strolled in without speaking, gaze roving over everything like she was evaluating a place for rent. She peered into the second bedroom, the bathroom, even my little office closet. She halted in the kitchen, hands on her hips. "This place is bigger than I remember," she replied finally. Thanks." She nodded like she'd verified something in her brain. Then she turned around and stared right at me. So she began like we were in the middle of some continuing discussion. "We've agreed this place should belong to the family now." I blinked at her. "Excuse me, a family place," she said again, slower this time, like I was missing the point. "It's ludicrous for you to have all this room to yourself when Ethan and I have a baby and rent is unattainable. We'll be moving in. You can locate somewhere else." She stated it nonchalantly, like announcing the weather. I laughed because what else do you do when someone says something insane? But Lauren didn't laugh back. She crossed her arms and arched her eyebrows like I was the one acting crazy. "Wait, are you serious?" I asked. "Of course," she said. "Mom and Dad agree. It's the finest option for everyone. It's not like you need all this space, it's only you." I gazed around my little condo, as if she had discovered a hidden ballroom that I was unaware of. "You are kidding, right? You don't just decide to move into my house." Lauren rolled her eyes. "Don't be theatrical. It is presently a family house. You will understand after you have children." That bit made me laugh more. "Lauren, this is not a family house. I purchased it. I paid for it. It is my." She waved her hand as if this were a small thing. "Yes, but come on. It's not fair of you to keep it when we need additional space. You can obtain a tiny apartment. You do not even utilize the second bedroom." I just stood there. I'd heard some crazy stories from my family before, but this was a new level. I inquired whether you had previously spoken with your mother and father. "Of course," she said as if it were clear. "They think that makes complete sense. Do they think I'll just hand up my keys and start packing?" Lauren sighed as if I were being ridiculous. "Look, we are not trying to fight. It's just what's best for everyone." Ethan's hours were slashed. Daycare prices continue to rise. And you're sitting here with 2 bedrooms and no children. Don't you think it's a bit selfish? I blinked at her. Selfish. Because I worked extra hours and skipped dinners so I could have a secure place to live, and now I'm selfish for not sharing it. Lauren took her coffee off the counter as if the conversation was over. "We will need to move in within 6 weeks. Gives you time to find somewhere." Before I could speak, she was already walking for the door. "Lauren," I replied, finally catching up with what had transpired. "You are not moving in here." She halted with her hand on the doorknob and flashed me this smile. "People say this when they believe you will ultimately change your mind." "We've already talked to Mom and Dad," she said. Then she departed. I stood in the center of my living room, looking at the door after it had closed. The refrigerator kicked on behind me, eliciting the customary grumble. I looked over at the mortgage letter which was still hanging there with the cow magnet. I briefly wondered whether I had dreamt everything, but Lauren seemed dead serious. Apparently, so were my parents. I wasn't upset yet. I simply felt off balance, like if the floor had shifted slightly and I was waiting to see if it would continue. After Lauren departed, I remained there for a while, gazing at the door as if it might open again. It did not. I sat down, opened my laptop, and tried to concentrate on work, but my thoughts kept returning to what she said. Family asset. As if she and Ethan had the authority to make that decision for me. I decided if I was going to relate the entire narrative, I should explain how we got here, because this did not begin yesterday. I've been working since I was 17. My first job was bussing tables in a dirty cafe near our high school. If clients felt generous, they might tip over the minimum wage. Most did not. After that, there were summer shifts at the hardware shop. After that, I worked part-time at the university library while in college. By the time I graduated, I had developed a practice of accepting any extra hours I could obtain. I lived cheaply for a long time. Studio apartment with a view of a brick wall and stuff from Craigslist. Meanwhile, Lauren was living a very other life. She's 4.5 years younger. My parents paid for her cheer camp, driving lessons and prom outfit while telling me they were short on money when I needed new brakes on my car. Lauren was the golden kid. Teachers adored her. Neighbors adored her. When she forgot homework, my parents explained that she was simply sleepy. When I received a B instead of an A, they questioned why I hadn't studied more. It wasn't like she was malicious or anything. She was simply used to things going her way. When I was in college, she enrolled in a private university with a price tag that made my stomach turn. Her parents co-signed her debts without blinking. I was attending a public school with scholarships and part-time employment. She studied communication and uploaded photos from tailgating parties, spring getaways, and chic coffee shops. I spent evenings in the library trying to finish work before my 5:30 a.m. deadline. Shift unloading trucks at the warehouse. When I bought the condo 6 years ago, it was the most affordable quality 2-bedroom I could find in an area that wasn't going apart. Peeling paint, old appliances and squeaky floorboards were all in need of repair. But it was mine. I recall signing the paperwork, with hands that wouldn't stop shaking because I was afraid I'd mess it up somehow. Lauren stopped by once and strolled around the premises, wrinkling her nose. "It's cozy," she added, using a nice way of describing tiny. "It's what I can afford," I informed her. She grinned as if she were amusing me. "I mean, I could never live somewhere like this, but good on you." That stayed with me. I worked extra shifts on weekends maintaining other people's laptops, lived on instant noodles and delayed purchasing quality clothes for years in order to own a property, while my sister treated it like some starter apartment she was too good for. Fast forward, she marries Ethan. He's okay. Quiet dude. Teaches middle school science. We were always nice to each other, but we seldom chatted much. They rented a decent 2-bedroom plus den apartment not far from here. Newer building with a gym and a functional rooftop deck. Much better than my condo. They welcomed a baby 18 months ago. Cute youngster. I gave presents, paid visits, and did my best to be a nice uncle. Then childcare costs began to hammer them. Ethan's hours were slashed. Lauren resigned her part-time marketing job to remain at home. Money issues began to creep into talks. There were few discussions about bills and rent during the months when money was tight. I assumed they'd shrink as normal people do when costs spiral out of control. Instead, Lauren comes up at my door saying that my condo is now family property just because we share DNA. I wasn't shocked that my folks supported her. The difference today is that this isn't just another family item that everyone may borrow. It's the one thing I worked so hard for. Lauren now believes she can waltz and claim it. And as usual, her parents will support her. But, here's the deal. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not living in their house, eating their food or using their car. I pay my bills. I keep my house in good condition. I've finally got something firm under my feet. And, to be honest, hearing Lauren call it selfish for me to keep the property I paid for sparked an emotion in my chest that I had never felt before. Sure, I was angry, but I also had stubbornness that I had never idea I possessed. Because this time, it isn't about sharing toys or getting rides to school. It is my home. And I will not give it up. The call began the morning after Lauren arrived at my house. "First, Mom, sweetheart. I heard you were a bit uptight yesterday," she continued in that voice you hear when someone is going to scold you but pretends not to be. "Tense?" I asked. Lauren informed us what had occurred. You have to view things from her perspective. They've got a baby. Renting is currently impossible. Mom, She arrived up and stated that she was moving into my house as if it was already decided. Nobody asked me anything. She presumably anticipated you'd help out. Families benefit one another. That is what we do. I told her I wouldn't agree to anything. And she sighed, as if I had just admitted to being a villain in a movie. You don't even use the second bedroom, she explained. And it simply sits there while they fight. That doesn't seem fair. I informed her again that it was not going to happen. She said we'd discuss more over dinner on Sunday. I had no idea there was a supper on Sunday. By lunchtime, my phone was vibrating again. This time my father delivered the same message but with a displeased tone, as if I had breached some family taboo. He said things like, "Step up," and "bigger picture." I told him that I wasn't the one asking someone else to give up their house. He advised me not to be too theatrical. Then I got a text from an aunt I hadn't seen in over a year. "Honey, they simply need a break. You can find another location later. For example, some people store spare condominiums in their back pockets." Lauren texted a lengthy message later that evening, explaining that this was just temporary and for the sake of the family. She attached a chart Ethan created that showed how much money they had saved by moving in with me. It had a rent of $100, utilities reduced by around 40%, and no HOA or repair fees stated. As if the place kept itself out of benevolence. I did not react. Instead, I visited the complex's public website. They display the regular lease terms. Early termination costs 4 months' rent. My eyebrows rose. So it wasn't simply about wanting extra room. It was about avoiding a bill. A few hours later, I contacted Tyler, a front desk employee at a nearby real estate company. I asked him standard inquiries regarding rental applications, recent denials and such. He claimed there had been a lot. High debt, missing payments, and plummeting credit ratings. He didn't identify anyone directly, but I began connecting the connections on my own. I didn't tell either my mother or father. No point yet. Friday afternoon, another call. Mom again. "We're having a family supper on Sunday," she remarked. "Everyone will be present. We can discuss this calmly." Is everything all calm now? I knew how those dinners went. A table full of relatives nods in agreement when someone tells you you're being ridiculous. Voices remain courteous until you give in. It resembles an intervention, but with lasagna. Still, I responded, "All right, I'll go." Lauren texted again on Saturday evening. "We must get out of here within 6 weeks. Don't make this any difficult than it needs to be." Who is it harder for, I wondered. I didn't respond. Sunday arrived. I headed over to my folks' apartment after lunch. Their residence is the same as our childhood home. The same crumbling wallpaper in the hallway. The same couch, which dips in the center since Dad refuses to replace it. When I stepped in, the scent of garlic bread struck me immediately. The table was already set. Lauren and Ethan sat on one side, like a panel waiting to question me. My parents remained in the kitchen. "Hello?" I said. Lauren smiled as though nothing was wrong. "Hey, we are just about to dine." I understood what the strategy was from the moment I sat down at that table. Lauren was wearing the false pleasant grin she employed when she was going to make a major request. Ethan seemed to want to be somewhere else. Mom and Dad continued giving each other subtle nods, as if they had a script ready. Lauren began first. "We only need the condo for 14 months, she replied softly, as if she was doing me a favor by providing a schedule. 14 months? I asked. "Well, maybe less," she responded hurriedly. "Depends how soon we get back on our feet." I did not react. She thrust the packet of papers toward me again. Ethan and I put up a strategy, budget, time frame, everything. Ethan cleared his throat. "It's really structured. We'd cover utilities. Obviously we just wouldn't be paying rent since you already own the house." "Utilities?" I inquired, glancing over the pages. "That's it." Lauren nodded like that was generous. Mom leaned in. "Honey, it's transitory. Think of the baby. She needs her own room." I looked at Lauren. "You rent a 2+ den now." "It's too pricey," she stated frankly. "So, get a smaller place." She didn't like that. Her mouth constricted. "Why should we uproot everything when you have room lying there unused?" I gazed at her. "Because it's my home." Dad groaned, laying down his fork like he was going to offer knowledge from a mountain. "This is about family working together. You've got the room. They've got the need. It's common sense." I gestured to the papers in front of me. "You worded this like I already agreed. Did anyone consider to really ask me first?" Silence. Lauren eventually remarked, "We figured you'd be reasonable once you saw the numbers." I switched to the so-called budget page. No HOA fees indicated. No repairs. Utilities cut down like power bills run on feelings. Rent 100. I slid the folder back toward her. Not happening. Her smile cracked. Why not? You do not even utilize the second bedroom. That doesn't matter. It's simply sitting there while we're drowning in debts, she remarked, voice rising a little. And you've got excess room you don't need. It's selfish. There it was again. Selfish. Like the years I spent working extra shifts, eating instant noodles, saying no to holidays so I could pay this property off didn't count. I slumped back in my chair. I glanced at your lease, I said. Lauren froze. What? It's public, I said. 4 months rent if you break it early, right? That's what this is actually about. Ethan moved uneasily. Lauren's face grew crimson. And that's none of your business, she snapped. You're making it my business, I said, keeping my voice even. You want to move into my home to avoid paying penalties on yours. Be honest about it. Mom frowned. Is this true? Lauren glared at me like I'd betrayed her. We just need a fresh start. Why are you making this so hard? Because you showed up and announced you were moving in like I had no say, I said. Like my years of work don't matter because you want an easy out. Ethan finally spoke. Look, we're just trying to find a solution that works for everyone. For everyone or for you two? I asked. He didn't answer. Lauren looked at Mom, desperate. Tell him this makes sense. You know it does. Mom hesitated, then said, Honey, they do have the baby to think about. I cut her off. Then maybe they should have planned better instead of showing up here with fake budgets and expecting me to hand over my keys. Lauren slammed her hand on the table. We are family. Families benefit one another. Family also respects each other, I said. You don't get to decide my home isn't mine anymore because you made bad financial choices. Dad finally spoke up. All right, let's calm down. No, I said, standing. You all sat here ready to guilt trip me like I'm the bad guy for not giving up the one thing I've worked for. I'm not doing it. Lauren's voice shook now. So, you'd rather see us homeless than help. You rent a 2+ den apartment, I said. Sell the furniture, break the lease, move to a cheaper place. People do it all the time. But you're not moving in here. Mom looked stunned. You don't mean that. I do, I said. This isn't a debate anymore. Lauren's face grew crimson. Ethan stared at the table like the wood grain was fascinating. I grabbed my jacket. Thanks for dinner, I said, heading for the door. Good luck with the lease. Nobody stopped me. As I left, I heard Lauren mutter something to Mom about me being cold-hearted. I didn't even look back. And after dinner, the family chorus kicked in. Lauren with, we can still work this out. Mom with family comes first. Dad's bigger picture. Even an uncle I haven't seen in a year weighing in with she has a baby. You don't. I stopped replying. I wasn't changing my mind. 10 days passed. One night after work I got home and noticed something by the door. Fine scratches near the lock. A scuff mark low on the wood like someone kicked it lightly. I ran my finger over the scratches. Could be nothing, sure. But I've lived here 6 years. I know every dent and squeak in this place. That wasn't there before. My stomach felt heavy. I went inside, locked the door, and sat down at my laptop. I filled out the city's online non-emergency report form. Just the basics. Possible tampering. No entry. No suspects. I hit submit. Got the confirmation email. Closed the laptop. Next day I swapped in a drill-resistant deadbolt and added 3 cameras, a door viewer facing the hallway and a small motion-activated cam inside covering the entry. Both recorded in high definition and sent alerts to my phone. Didn't cost much. Worth every penny if I was right about who was creeping around. For 3 nights nothing happened. The cameras stayed quiet. Still I kept checking the feeds before bed. Volume up on my phone in case alerts came through. 4th night, it happened. 2:49 a.m. Buzzing phone on the nightstand woke me up. Motion detected at your door. I grabbed the phone, opened the app. The grainy black and white feed showed someone standing at my door. Lauren, hoodie up, hair sticking out the sides, shoulders hunched. She had something shiny in her hand, moving it around the lock. I felt my chest go tight. I hit record on the app, swung my legs out of bed, and dialed 911. Whispered to the dispatcher. Someone's trying to break into my condo. I have video. Gave the address. Stayed on the line. Lauren kept working the lock like she'd done it before. Like she knew I wasn't home. The building's hallway lights kicked on. Automatic timer. She froze for half a second, looked over her shoulder, then went back to jiggling the lock. The dispatcher said units were close, told me to stay put. I watched through the phone screen, heart hammering. A minute later, 2 cops came into view on the hallway camera, walking fast. Lauren didn't see them until they were almost on top of her. I stayed behind the door until the officers came down the hall. When they told her to step back, I opened up and showed them the live feed with the tool at the lock. The cops asked for ID. She stammered, said something about forgetting her keys. I showed them the app recording, her with the screwdriver clear as day. They detained her right there in the hallway, cuffed, red wrists, the whole thing. I wasn't smug. I wasn't even angry in that moment. Just tired, shaky, like my body hadn't caught up with my brain yet. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. One cop stayed to take my statement while the other walked Lauren down the hall. 5 minutes later, Ethan showed up, hair messy, sweatpants, looking like he sprinted over. "What's going on?" he asked, voice cracking. "She tried to break in," I said flatly. Ethan looked at the cop, then at me. "It's a misunderstanding. She had a spare from before." I cut him off. "I never gave her a spare." "She thought she still had one," he said weakly. "She didn't," I said. Ethan rubbed his face. Didn't argue after that. Just mumbled something about calling a lawyer and followed the cops out. I locked the door behind them, double-checked the deadbolt, sat on the couch staring at nothing for a long time. The cameras kept recording until the hallway went quiet again. The morning after Lauren got arrested, I called off work for a couple hours. I wanted everything documented before people started calling me names again. First, I stopped at the police station. I turned over the video files. They said they'd pull the 911 audio from dispatch. One of the officers gave me a case number and said the video made things pretty straightforward. They'd filed the report, forward it to the prosecutor, and I'd get updates later. When I got home, I made 3 copies of everything, one on a thumb drive, one in a locked folder in my cloud account. I printed out the incident report and stuck it in a folder with my mortgage papers. Then I emailed my boss, saying I'd be a bit late to work because of a personal security incident. That was all I said. He wrote back, "Handle what you need to. Thanks for letting me know." I left it at that. By noon my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Mom first. "How could you do this to your sister?" she asked, voice sharp. "She tried to break into my condo nearly 3 a.m. I said, "I didn't do this." "She did." "You didn't have to call the police," Mom said, like there had been some better option. "She had a screwdriver in my lock," I said. "What did you want me to do? Open the door and offer her coffee?" "Family should handle things privately," Mom said. "Does privately mean pretending it didn't happen?" I asked. She didn't answer that one. A couple hours later, Dad called. Same tone, different words. "She has a baby," he said. "She made a mistake. Don't ruin her life over this." "She made her own choices," I said. "I was asleep in my own home. I'm not apologizing for protecting it." He muttered something about me being cold. I hung up before saying something I'd regret. By evening my aunt texted, "She didn't mean it. Just drop the charges." I ignored it. 2 days later a neighbor mentioned an old fraud case. Court records showed a deferred sentence and probation from years back. The new arrest didn't violate active probation, but it did mean a new conviction on top of a prior case. I looked it up later. Court records are public if you know where to look. Sure enough, Lauren had a small fraud charge from 6 years ago. Deferred sentence, probation, fine paid. Nothing major, but it was there. I didn't post about it anywhere. Didn't tell cousins. Didn't go on some big rant online. I answered the prosecutor's questions, emailed the footage when they asked for it, and kept everything boring and professional. Lauren's case moved fast. They booked her on misdemeanor charges related to the break-in attempt, and the prior case didn't help. She pleaded guilty to avoid a bigger mess. The judge gave her a short 90-day sentence and a criminal record that wouldn't go away this time. Ethan texted me while she was inside. Long paragraph about how they'd been under stress. Daycare costs, medical bills, rent too high, life coming at them too fast. He said Lauren was just trying to do what parents do. Keep a roof over their kid's head. I read it twice, saved it, didn't respond. Their money situation tanked hard after that. They were still in a fixed-term lease. When they broke it, the 4-month penalty hit. After that, they grabbed a short month-to-month elsewhere, and the rate jumped. With Lauren not working, and now with a record, Ethan was carrying the whole thing on a teacher's salary. 4 months later, Lauren was out. I heard from Mom they'd moved in with her and Dad for a while. That's between you and them, I said. Not my business anymore. Mom didn't like that answer. She said the house was tense. Lauren and Ethan argued about bills. Dad hated the noise. Mom tried to keep the peace. I stayed out of it. A month later I saw Dad in person. He stopped by my condo to drop off some mail that had gone to their address. He looked tired. Your sister's having a rough time, he said. Finally. She made her choices, I said. She says you hate her now. I don't hate her, I said. But I'm done being the person everyone leans on while calling me selfish. He didn't argue, didn't defend her, just nodded slowly, handed me the mail, and left. That was the last real conversation we had about it. Life went back to normal for me faster than I expected. I kept my routine the same. Work in the mornings, gym in the evenings, fixed the sticky window in my living room one Saturday, finally painted the patchy wall in the hallway with cheap rollers and way too much blue tape. Little things I'd been meaning to do for years. Later, I heard through my mom that Lauren wanted to clear the air. My first thought was she wanted to yell at me. My second thought was she probably wanted something again. I didn't reach out. Instead, I mailed them a single thing. A framed photo of my front door with the new lock installed. Under it, a short note. Hope you find a place that's yours for real. No swearing, no insults, just clear. 2 weeks later, Mom called. Lauren wants to talk, she said carefully, like I was a wild animal she didn't want to spook. About what? About. She wants to apologize, Mom said. Does this apology come before or after she asked for something? I asked. Silence on the line. I'll meet her, I said finally. But here's the deal. My home is off the table. Nobody shows up uninvited. If she can't agree to that, I'm not coming. Mom agreed. The meetup was set for Saturday at their house. Neutral ground, Mom said. Lauren was already there when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen table, arms crossed, chin up. Ethan sat next to her, looking like he wanted to disappear into his chair. I sat across from them. All right, I said. You wanted to talk. Go ahead. Lauren didn't waste time. You didn't have to call the cops, she started, voice sharp. Family doesn't do that to each other. I gazed at her. You tried to break into my home. I was desperate, she said, like that made it fine. You wouldn't listen. You left us no choice. There was a choice, I said. You could have found another apartment like normal people. She waved a hand. Do you know how hard it is with a baby? With bills? We needed help. You wanted a free house, I said flatly. We deserved help, she snapped. You don't have kids. You don't understand what it's like. All that space going to waste while we were drowning. I felt my jaw tighten. Space I worked for. Space I paid for while you were calling it small and laughing at it 6 years ago. Lauren rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. That was different. No. I said, keeping my voice even. You treated this place like it was nothing until you needed it. Then you decided it was yours. Not asked. Decided. You could have just let us stay a few months, she shot back. But no, you had to make it this big thing. Pressing charges. Really? You ruined my record. You ruined your record, I said. You picked up that screwdriver. You showed up at 2:49 in the morning. Not me. Lauren leaned forward, eyes sharp. You think you're better than us because you have a condo and no responsibilities? You think working a few extra hours makes you some kind of hero? I laughed once, short and dry. No, I think it makes me the person who owns the place you tried to steal. Her face went red. We just needed a break. And I needed boundaries, I said. Now I have them. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You showed up uninvited. You ignored every no I gave you. You tried to break in, and now you're mad at me because there were consequences. Ethan finally spoke, voice low. She just means it didn't have to go this far. It went as far as she pushed it, I said. I'm not carrying that for her. Lauren glared at me, fists tight on the table. One day, you'll need help. Don't expect us to be there. I stood up. Good. That way we're all clear. She blinked like she didn't expect that answer. I hope you figure things out, I said. But my home is off limits forever. No debates. No surprises. We're done here. I walked out before she could fire back. Weeks passed after that. Mom tried a couple more times to get everyone together for a family dinner. I told her the same thing each time. If my home comes up, Even once, "I'm leaving." She said she understood. I kept my routine. Work in the mornings, gym in the evenings, fixing small things around the condo. I bought some cheap plants for the windowsill, upgraded my desk chair. Finally, life felt quiet. One afternoon, a cousin mentioned Lauren had picked up a part-time job at a daycare. Ethan grabbed extra tutoring hours at school. After a few months they found a small rental farther from the city. Cheaper, older place, but theirs. I didn't reach out. Not angry, just done. 14 months later, the condo looked better than it ever had. Fresh paint on every wall, not just the hallway this time. New locks on both doors. The squeaky floorboard near the bedroom finally fixed after years of promising myself I'd get around to it. I bought a decent couch, got rid of the lumpy one I'd been hanging onto since college. Picked up a used rug that didn't clash with the curtains for once. Even the closet office looked better. I mounted a real shelf instead of stacking everything on milk crates. The plants by the windowsill were still alive somehow. A couple even had new leaves. I watered them on schedule, gave them the good sunlight, talked to them sometimes when I was bored. Coming home felt different now. Not because the place looked nice, but because it was mine in a way it hadn't been before. I'd open the door after work, hear the deadbolt click behind me, and feel it in my shoulders. The weight of the last year just gone. No surprise visitors, no guilt trips, no phone calls telling me I was selfish. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was steady. For the first time in a long time I could actually sit on my couch with the TV off. No noise, no drama, and just breathe in my own space without wondering what fight was coming next. Peace. Not victory. Not revenge. Just boundaries that stayed where I put them. My family excluded me from a Caribbean vacation. 9 years of bank records later, the court forced them to pay me back $500,000. The Instagram notice arrived at 3:17 a.m. on Saturday. My sister Madeline Pierce had tagged me in a photo, which piqued my interest because we hadn't spoken in 4 months, except from a few Christmas texts. I opened the app, anticipating a retro photo or a family reminiscence. Instead, I was gazing at a carousel of photographs from a tropical trip. My brother Bryce Callahan, sister Madeline Pierce, and younger brother Tyler Bennett are all smiling on a white sand beach, beverages in hand, while the sunset paints the sky behind them. The location tag indicates the Grand Cayman Islands. There were more photographs. They were on a yacht, at a resort pool, and at what appeared to be an upscale beachside restaurant. The caption read, "Family bonding time, nothing better than having all your favorite people in one place, all your favorite people." I browsed through the comments, saw cousins and family friends commenting things like, "So jealous" and "family goals," and wished I could be there. I glanced at the date stamps. They had been there for 6 days. I knew nothing about the 6-day family trip. I had not been invited. I hadn't even been notified it was occurring. The labeling in the first shot seemed purposeful. A message is not an inclusion. They wanted me to see it. They wanted me to know I had been excluded. I sat in my flat for 45 minutes, gazing at those photographs. My thoughts was whirling with bewilderment, hurt, and steadily increasing wrath. We were a family with 5 siblings. It had been since Tyler Bennett was born 31 years ago. I was the oldest, 39. We had our problems, certainly. Which family didn't? But this level of willful exclusion felt like a message, as if they had convened a conference, booked an expensive trip, and determined that I did not deserve to be included. The next morning, I contacted Madeline Pierce. She responded on the 5th ring, her tone apprehensive. "Hey Jack Sullivan. What's up?" I maintained my voice level. "I spotted your Instagram post. Nice trip. When were you going to mention it?" Silence. Then, "Jack Sullivan, this was kind of a last-minute affair. We didn't actually. You stayed for 6 days at a resort that required months of advance reservations." Madeline Pierce, "This is not a last-minute situation." More silence. "It was a family thing. Bryce Callahan organized it." The connotation was apparent. I was not considered part of the family. Why was I not invited? I asked explicitly. Madeline Pierce's exhalation was audible. "We needed a break from your negativity. Okay, everything with you is usually so weighty and dramatic. We wanted to take one trip where we could rest without having to deal with your problems." The casual brutality was more effective than a frontal insult. My difficulties. They were alluding to the fact that I had been in treatment for the previous 18 months, coping with depression following my divorce. I'd been candid about my struggles, and I'd been real with my family instead of pretending everything was fine. So you eliminated me because I've been struggling. My voice came out flat and impersonal. Jack Sullivan, don't turn this into something it isn't. You are always doing this, making everything about you and playing the victim. We just wanted one trip without any hassle. She was gaslighting me, portraying my genuine pain as my being exaggerated. It was a trend I was starting to recognize. Who knows about this? Does Mom know? Madeline Pierce was silent. Mom helped pay for it. It was her idea, honestly. She mentioned that the three of us needed quality time together. Mom had helped arrange a family holiday that intentionally excluded me. That realization affected me differently. This wasn't simply my siblings being irresponsible. This was a planned, purposeful exclusion, with our mother's approval. I see, I said. Thank you for clarifying. I hung up before Madeline Pierce could reply. I sat in my living room, my phone still in my hand, and I felt something shift inside me, like a decision was becoming clear. They wanted me gone. They intended to isolate me from the family. Okay, I'd give them what they wanted, but they'd know precisely what they'd lost. I spent the following 10 days in meticulous observation mode, not contacting anyone but simply monitoring how they engaged on social media and scheduled family gatherings via group chat. I was still nominally a member of, but had remained mute during their vacation preparations. I began to notice patterns that I had previously overlooked because of my near proximity. Every family dinner invitation came with conditions. If you're feeling up to it or if you're not in the right frame of mind. Every discussion was carefully regulated, as if they were holding a bomb that may detonate. They determined I was broken, and they all opted to control me rather than include me. I reflected on the previous 18 months, how my divorce from Lauren Hayes had devastated me, how I had lost the house and half of my finances, and how I had fallen into a deep depression that required medication and weekly treatment. I'd been open about my problems with my family, sometimes too open. I had informed them that I was getting bad ideas. I'd begged for help, and it seemed it was too much. They determined I was too damaged to include and too much trouble to handle, so they just eliminated me. If I'd been upset at them, I could have made a better decision. But what I felt was colder than rage and more deliberate. I felt as if I could see properly for the first time. I began with research. My family relationships had always been convoluted, but I had never bothered to investigate them thoroughly. Now I did. I took out old images and emails and began charting patterns. I was the oldest, and had always been the responsible one, helping Bryce Callahan through business school, lending Madeline Pierce money to start her real estate firm, and being there for Tyler Bennett during his drug struggles. I'd been the family bank, therapist, and safety net, and when I needed help instead of offering it, they let me go. But there was more. I started looking into family finances, our late father's inheritance issue, and how our family wealth had been dispersed. What I discovered was fascinating. Our father died 9 years ago, leaving a convoluted inheritance. The will stated that his substantial assets, resulting from his successful construction firm, would be split evenly among his 5 children. But there were issues. The firm needs to be sold, assets liquidated, and debts satisfied. My mother, as an executive, had overseen the procedure. I was too trusting to question the specifics at the time. Now I am looking much closely. What I learned made the vacation restriction seem like a minor annoyance. My mother had been deliberately transferring my inheritance to my siblings. Not all of it, and not in obvious unlawful methods, but rather by carefully manipulating estate expenditures, business values, and distribution timing. Over a 9-year period, she managed to deprive me of about $385,000 while ensuring that my siblings received their full portions, plus what should have been mine. The documentation was difficult, yet damning. She had mentioned estate costs, which were actually payments to Madeline Pierce's real estate firm. She had devalued the assets I was meant to inherit while overvaluing those my siblings got. She'd taken out loans on estate properties and given them to Bryce Callahan and Tyler Bennett, indicating that they were emergency family support and did not count against inheritance shares. It was a complex financial scam that had taken years to complete. And I hadn't noticed because I believed her, since I was the nice son who didn't question his mother. I spent 4 days confirming everything with a forensic accountant who I hired privately. The accountant verified this. Given the intentional nature of the manipulation, there was sufficient evidence to justify a legal challenge, including criminal fraud charges. I sat with this information for 10 days, contemplating what it meant. My family had not just shunned me from a trip. They'd been methodically barring me from my inheritance for years, taking what was properly mine and dividing it among themselves. And when I had the guts to be weak, to want assistance, to be more than just the family ATM, they thought I was too much bother to include. The vacation images were the surface manifestation of a far deeper sickness. Now I had to figure out what to do about it. I could address them privately and demand they put things right. But I knew how it would go. Denial, minimization, charges that I was too theatrical or greedy. Alternatively, I might take legal action, go to court, and compel the restitution of stolen inheritance through the legal system. That might be enjoyable in its own right, but it would be time-consuming, costly, and unpredictable. Or I could do something more specific, something that would make them feel viscerally what they had lost by omitting me. They might reclaim not just the money but also the friendship, trust, and family unity that they had taken for granted. I could ensure that they felt my absence in ways they would never forget. I selected the third option. I began by withdrawing entirely. There are no calls, messages, or answers to group conversations. When Madeline Pierce asked whether I was okay, I responded with a simple note. I am fine. Simply need some room. There is no explanation or drama, only absence. Then I engaged an attorney, not to press criminal charges, but to chronicle the inheritance scam. We compiled everything into a complete package, including bank records, email trails, accountant depositions, and expert testimony on estate manipulation. Then I instructed my attorney to send letters to each of my siblings and my mother. Not threatening legal action yet, but gently bringing out what had been discovered, recording the theft, and allowing them to see what they had done in black and white. The answers arrived within hours. Bryce Callahan phoned 18 times. Madeline Pierce sent anxious messages. Tyler Bennett arrived to my apartment. I didn't answer, reply, or interact. My mother responded differently. She phoned my attorney and said it was all a misunderstanding, that the estate was complex, and that I was misinterpreting regular executive actions. My attorney gently documented her response and warned her that we would pursue legal action. My family's terror was both immediate and satisfying since they knew. They had always known what they were doing, and now they knew. I knew. The second part of my strategy was more personal. I began contacting extended family members such as cousins, aunts, and uncles, with whom I had maintained ties but who were not involved in the core dysfunction. I hadn't told them about the inheritance fraud yet. I simply asked questions about family history, connections, and their thoughts on family dynamics. What I discovered was enlightening. Our family had patterns that dated back generations. My mother had a tough connection with her own siblings. My father appeared to have been the mediator, holding everyone together. Following his death, my mother began to prioritize my brothers over me. But I had been too close to notice it. My extended family had observed and questioned why I was often excluded from certain gatherings, why discussions would pause when I entered rooms, and why I appeared increasingly distant. They had spotted the dysfunction that I had previously overlooked. I documented all of these talks, not for legal reasons, but to get a complete picture of what was going on. To prove that I wasn't insane, that I wasn't being theatrical, that the exclusion and manipulation were real and visible, and that they had been going on for years. Then I accomplished something I couldn't have imagined doing 8 months ago. I phoned my ex-wife, Lauren Hayes. We hadn't communicated much since the divorce, and when we did, it was hard and hurtful. But I needed to hear from someone who had seen my family from the outside and had no need to defend them. Lauren Hayes answered the second call, her voice wary. Jack Sullivan, is everything all right? We spoke for about 3 hours. I informed her about the vacation exclusion and what I'd uncovered about the inheritance, and Lauren Hayes told me things I didn't know, things she'd kept hidden during our marriage out of fear of hurting me. She had seen my mother continuously disparage me. Subtle remarks about my professional choices, comparisons to my more successful siblings, and the insinuation that I had never quite measured up. She'd seen my siblings take advantage of my kindness while providing nothing. She'd attempted to bring it up during our marriage, and I defended my family, accused her of misunderstanding, and told her she was being unjust. I'm sorry for not listening, I told her. Lauren Hayes was quiet for a bit. I'm sorry I couldn't help you realize it. But Jack Sullivan, this has been happening to you your entire life. The vacation stuff, the inheritance theft, are only the most conspicuous manifestations of a long-standing trend. You have always been the family's scapegoat. The one who is blamed, ostracized, and never considered good enough while doing everything for them. She was correct. I'd spent 39 years attempting to get the favor of individuals who had long since decided that I didn't deserve it. The knowledge was simultaneously painful and empowering. With this knowledge, I proceeded to the following level. I ceased making financial contributions. Bryce Callahan had been banking on a loan from me to help him build his consultancy firm. I retracted the offer without explanation. Madeline Pierce had approached me about investing in a real estate venture. I declined through my attorney. Tyler Bennett, who was still dealing with sobriety, had called me for emotional assistance during difficult times. I stopped responding. I withdrew myself as the family's safety net, backup plan, and the guy who could solve everything. The terror worsened. My mother phoned my attorney and demanded a meeting. Bryce Callahan's emails ranged from contrite to threatening. Madeline Pierce attempted to rally her extended family to intercede. Tyler Bennett left me heartfelt voicemails, stating I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. I documented everything but did not reply to anything. Because this was what they were learning. My absence resulted in repercussions. Without me, their financial safety net was vanished. Without me, their emotional labor source had vanished. Without me, the familial glue that kept everything together had vanished. They had taken me for granted for so long that they hadn't thought what would happen if I suddenly ceased being accessible. The third step was the most calculated. I began gently selling the narrative to extended relatives, not forcefully, but just answering questions honestly about the inheritance scam, the vacation exclusion, and the pattern of scapegoating I had finally identified. I did not need to exaggerate or embellish. The facts were bad enough. My extended relatives had their own problems with my mother, as well as insights on the dysfunctional dynamics. My candor gave them license to admit what they'd seen. Family gatherings become uncomfortable. Everyone chose sides. Some people protected my mother and siblings. Family loyalty ran deep. Others, particularly those who had been marginalized themselves, saw the trend and spoke up. The seemingly cohesive family was dissolving, and everyone understood why. My siblings attempted to build a counter-narrative. They accused me of being nasty, exaggerating the situation, misinterpreting the inheritance difficulties, and excluding people from vacation. However, their tale did not hold up to inspection. Too many people witnessed the turmoil. There was too much proof. Their attempts to portray me as the issue just made them appear more guilty. My family had descended into disarray 4 months after finding those vacation images. The inheritance fraud case was moving forward. My attorney had submitted official complaints to the probate court. My mother was facing possible criminal charges. My siblings were facing civil lawsuits to reclaim the stolen monies. And they were all realizing that family gatherings without me were empty, unfinished, and inappropriate. Because despite everything, I was the one who planned events, remembered birthdays, and maintained relationships. Without me, the family's infrastructure disintegrated. The breaking point occurred during my grandmother's 92nd birthday celebration. My grandma had invited me straight. She was my father's mother, had always treated me well, and was not engaged in any of the family problems. I debated declining, but thought she deserved my presence. I arrived exactly on time, brought an expensive present, and spoke cordially with extended relatives. My mother and siblings were present, of course. The tension was suffocating. Everyone felt it. Bryce Callahan approached me in the hallway around halfway through the celebration. His face was flushed with fury and what appeared to be desperation. "You should drop this legal, Jack Sullivan. You are wrecking the family." I glanced at him calmly. "I did not destroy anything. You all did this years ago. I'm simply refusing to pretend anymore." Bryce Callahan moved closer, his voice low and menacing. "Mom made certain blunders. About the estate. We will repay you, but you must quit this public crusade. You are making everyone uncomfortable." The entitlement was breathtaking. "You'll repay me with what? You previously spent money that did not belong to you, and I am making others uncomfortable. Where was your concern when you planned a trip just to exclude me?" Bryce Callahan clenched his jaw. "That vacation was about us taking a break from your continual negativity. You always play the victim, and your sadness drags everyone down. There it was. The reality below all the reasons. So, when I needed help and was honest about my struggles, your answer was to exclude me and steal my inheritance. That is your version of family." Bryce Callahan glanced aside. "It was not like that." "Then tell what it was like." He couldn't, since there was no answer that didn't reveal what they had done. Madeline Pierce arrived at the end of the corridor, noticed us conversing, and swiftly approached. Jack Sullivan, could we please talk about this like adults? I turned to face her. I attempted to talk. You retaliated by organizing a vacation without me, robbing my inheritance, and gaslighting me for my pessimism. We're done talking. Madeline Pierce's eyes streamed with tears. I had seen her employ this persuasion approach several times. I'm sorry, yes, we made errors. But what you're doing now, filing lawsuits and pitting families against one another, is worse than anything we did. Moral relativism was astounding. No, Madeline Pierce, thievery and systematic exclusion are not errors. They are choices that you have made for years. You are now facing penalties. That is not me being vengeful. This is how reality works. Tyler Bennett joined them, seeming thin and weak. His sobriety was plainly failing. Jack Sullivan. I need you, guy. I'm barely holding on, and you aren't returning my calls. You are my brother. The guilt trip was evident, but I had learnt not to fall for it. I was your brother when you planned your trip without me. I was your brother when you helped waste my inheritance. You need help? Get it from Bryce Callahan, Madeline Pierce, or Mom. They are the family you choose. My mother came suddenly, as if she had been waiting for this confrontation. Her expression was calm and controlled, but I could see rage in her eyes. Jack Sullivan, that's enough. You have made your point. You insulted me, threatened legal action, and turned my family against me. What else do you want? What did I want? I had been asking myself that question for months. I want you all to acknowledge what you did. I want you to know that you did not simply steal money or exclude me from a trip. You damaged trust. You convinced me that I was the problem when it was always you. You took advantage of my commitment, generosity, and affection. You did it carefully and methodically for years, and when I needed you the most, when I was weak and hurting, you decided I was too much effort and let me go. My mother's composure broke. I am your mommy. I did what I felt was best for our family. You did what was best for yourself and your favorite children, I interrupted. You determined I didn't deserve equal treatment, inheritance, or inclusion, and you persuaded my siblings to agree. That's not the mother. That's a manipulator who gave birth to me. The hallway had become quiet. Extended family members watched from doorways, pretending not to listen but hearing everything. This was the clash they'd expected. My mother's voice became colder. If you take these legal proceedings, you will have no family remaining. Is it truly what you want? To be alone? I'd been terrified of that menace my entire life. I am afraid that if I fight the dysfunction, I will lose everyone. But now I understand. I had previously been alone. These individuals had never truly been my family. They were users who had kept me around for as long as I could be helpful. I'd rather be alone with my integrity than surrounded by individuals who treat me this way, I explained. So, if that is the option, I will choose alone. I walked away from them, the party, and my grandmother's house, satisfied that I had finally given them the truth without flinching. The court process lasted 9 months. The probate court inquiry corroborated what my forensic accountant had discovered. My mother had methodically cheated the estate, transferring my fortune to my siblings through phony bills and assessments. The court was harsh in his decision, citing obvious evidence of purposeful deception. My mother was compelled to return the whole sum plus interest. $385,000 plus 9 years of accrued interest totaled approximately $500,000. She didn't have that much liquid capital. Her home was placed up for sale. Her retirement accounts were garnished. My siblings, who had received the stolen monies, were declared co-defendants and compelled to refund what they had obtained. Bryce Callahan's corporate development ambitions failed. Madeline Pierce had to sell her investment homes. Tyler Bennett lost the tiny apartment my mother purchased with my inheritance money. The financial destruction was profound. They lost their story, not just the money. The probate court proceedings were public record. The evidence was seen by extended family members. Members in the community who knew our family saw the court records. They had carefully built the image of a tight, loving family with one difficult kid, but it was ruined. Instead, everyone witnessed the truth. A manipulative mother who had taken from her own kid, siblings who had participated in the crime, and a family that had alienated the one person who had kept everything together. They stopped receiving invitations to family occasions. The majority of my extended relatives sided with me. Community esteem has dwindled. My mother, who took pleasure in her social status, became increasingly alienated. My siblings learned that associating with known fraud harmed their professional ties. 3 years after the vacation photographs emerged on Instagram, I received a message from Madeline Pierce. It was lengthy, rambling, and plainly written. During an emotional breakdown, she revealed everything: the purposeful exclusion, inheritance theft, and habit of scapegoating. She stated they rationalized it to themselves, convincing each other that I wouldn't notice or care, that I was too stable to be affected by their behavior. She pleaded for forgiveness, a chance to rebuild, and pledged to do whatever it took to make things right. I read the message 3 times, hoping for true contrition rather than just regret about the consequences. The distinction mattered. Remorse entailed acknowledging the harm done and experiencing true regret. Regret meant being angry because one's actions had unpleasant consequences. Madeline Pierce's statement was full with sadness. She was sad they had been caught, that they had to face the penalties, and that the family's reputation had been destroyed. However, there was no genuine awareness of the sorrow they had inflicted. There was no comprehension that what they had done was profoundly wrong. Regardless of whether I discovered it, I did not answer. 2 weeks later, Bryce Callahan called from an unidentified number. I had blocked all of their personal phones months ago. He left a voicemail. His voice did not sound like the confident, assertive tone I had heard at my grandmother's celebration. He sounded broken. Jack Sullivan. I know you're probably not going to hear this, but I have to say it. We up. Not simply about inheritance. Everything. Everything from how we handled you to the trip. You were correct about everything, and I apologize. Not because of the legal errors or the money, but because I honestly didn't know what we were doing until it was too late. You were our brother, yet we treated you as if you were disposable. That was incorrect. I was mistaken. I do not expect forgiveness. But I needed to let you know that I saw it now. I realize what we lost, and I apologize. The apology felt more sincere than Madeline Pierce's, but it came too late. The damage couldn't be healed by words. Tyler Bennett's effort at reconciliation came via my therapist. He had phoned her office, said that he was my brother, and asked if she could organize a conversation. My therapist mentioned it during a session. Tyler Bennett, your brother, has reached out. If you are willing, he would like to speak with you through professional mediation. There is no pressure, but I wanted you to know the choice existed. I pondered it. Tyler Bennett has always been my most vulnerable sibling, struggling with drugs and mental health issues. Part of me wanted to believe that his desire for reconciliation was sincere. But I was also aware of that pattern, in which the addict used emotional manipulation to obtain what they want. What does he want? I asked my therapist. He claims he wants to apologize so he can comprehend what occurred and how to go. He has been clean for 8 months and wishes to make apologies as part of his recovery process. So this was about his healing, not actually rebuilding our relationship. That was revealing. Tell him I am not interested. I explained that his rehabilitation is his duty, not mine. I'm not going to be his amends project because he was involved in everything that happened. My therapist nodded in understanding. That is a healthy border. Just wanted to make sure you had a choice. The choice. That's what the entire adventure had been about. Reclaiming control over how I was treated, who I let into my life, and what I considered as normal. For 39 years, I had accepted their story about our family. Now I'm writing my own. My mother never directly contacted me. Instead, she spoke through her sister, my Aunt Evelyn Parker, who had stayed impartial during the judicial procedures. Evelyn Parker phoned one evening, her voice cautious. Jack Sullivan. I know you don't want to hear from anybody in the family, but your mother requested me to express her regret. She understands she can't undo what she's done, but she wants you to know she regrets it. I was silent for a time. Does she regret stealing from me or being caught? Evelyn Parker sighed. Honestly, I believe both. But Jack Sullivan, she is your mother at some point. At some time what happens? I interrupted. At some point I'm expected to forgive her for giving birth to me. Because family loyalty should prevail over thievery and systematic emotional assault. That is not how good relationships function, Aunt Evelyn Parker. I understand. You're correct. I simply hate to see the family split apart like way. The family was broken apart many years ago. I answered. I'm just refusing to pretend anymore. Evelyn Parker accepted it and didn't press anymore. She understood. 3 years after those Instagram photographs were posted, I attended a wedding of a common relative. My mother and siblings were present, of course. We went through the event in precise orbits, never quite colliding. I saw them engage with other family members, noting the meticulously maintained facades, forced grins, and awareness that others were looking and judging. They appeared shrunken, smaller. My mother had visibly aged, the stress of court fights and social ostracism showing on her face. Bryce Callahan had gained weight, appeared exhausted, and discouraged. Madeline Pierce's fancy clothing could not conceal the tension. Tyler Bennett appeared sober yet fragile, as if he may break at any moment. I felt nothing while viewing them. No gratification, no vindication, just a faraway observation. They were individuals I used to know. People who had previously been significant to me but were now strangers with a common background. At some time my mother approached me. I saw her collect confidence across the room and go over with resolve that resembled desperation. "Jack Sullivan, may we chat for 7 minutes?" I debated declining, but I was interested about her response after 3 years of silence. 7 minutes. We walked to a quiet area of the arena. My mother's eyes were older and more unsure than I had ever seen. "I know I can't undo what I did. I realize I have broken your trust in our relationship, but I need you to understand. I never intended to hurt you. I told myself I was doing the best for everyone. I was mistaken. I was selfish and unkind, and I justified it with terrible thinking, and I sincerely apologize." It was the most genuine apology I had received from her. However, it was also too late. "I appreciate the apologies," I replied. "However, nothing changes. You did not just make mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate decisions throughout time. You determined that I was less valued than my brothers. Less worthy of affection, inheritance, and participation. You also trained people to perceive me that way. An apology will not solve that problem." My mother's eyes streamed with tears. "I understand, but Jack Sullivan, you are my son. I adore you. Doesn't that count for anything?" I considered that. It should. But love is more than simply a sensation, it refers to acts. And your acts demonstrated precisely how much your love was worth. I went away before she could reply. Left her standing there, tears streaming down her cheeks. I felt nothing. There was nothing but emptiness where the family should have been. 4 years after everything happened, I received a letter from Bryce Callahan. Not an SMS or email, but a real handwritten letter. Multiple pages are plainly written and revised several times. He described everything. Their vacation preparation, the precise talks in which they agreed to exclude me, and how my mother encouraged it by portraying my melancholy as a burden they should not have to bear. He described how they'd rationalized the inheritance theft by telling themselves that I didn't need the money as much as they did, that I was more financially secure, and that removing from my half was really fair given how much I'd allegedly been favored as the oldest kid. He said that it was all falsehoods they told themselves to rationalize thievery and violence. He wrote on the social and emotional consequences they faced, in addition to the financial ones. How the extended family had cut them off. How their reputation in the community had been ruined. How they couldn't attend family gatherings without being judged and excluded. How they'd effectively become what they'd created in me, outsiders in our own family. We excluded you so you felt our absence. Bryce Callahan put it thus way. And now we feel yours every single day. Not because you're excluding us, but because we destroyed something irreplaceable and we can't get it back. You were right. We will feel your absence forever, and we deserve it. My family had never been as honest as the letter was. However, it remained focused on their agony, repercussions, and sentiments. They maintained their composure, even after apologizing. I did not answer to the letter, but I saved it. Put it in the same file as the rest of the documentation from this mess. The vacation images that began it all, the bank records proving theft, the court paperwork, the emails and texts, and the desperate attempts at reconciliation. It was a detailed account of how a family might ruin itself via brutality masquerading as affection. I created a new life, found new friends who did not have my DNA but shared my beliefs, and dated someone compassionate and emotionally accessible who saw my openness about mental health as heroic rather than burdensome. I've advanced in my work without having to deal with continual family strife. I went to therapy not to repair connections with those who had damaged me, but to develop stronger relationships with those who merited my trust. I went, visited locations I'd always wanted to see, shared images on social media, tagged people who truly appreciated my presence, and made my own version of those vacation photos. But with true connection, rather than willful exclusion. On the 5th anniversary of discovering those Instagram photographs, I got one last message from Madeline Pierce. It was short. I noticed your vacation photographs. You seem cheerful. I'm happy. I'm sorry we can't share in that delight. I understand why. I simply wanted to let you know that I understand what we lost. And you're correct. We will feel your absence forever. I hope you find the family you deserve, wherever you are, and with whomever you are, since it was definitely not us. I read the message once, saved it, and went on with my day since that was the lesson I had finally learnt. Family was not based on blood or duty. It was about mutual respect, true affection, and ongoing support. It was about individuals who turned up not only when it was convenient, but also when it was difficult. My biological family had failed each of those exams. But I had already found family elsewhere. My chosen family demonstrated that I mattered via their acts. 6 years after those images were published, I stood on a Thai beach among people who loved me. Celebrating a significant birthday. We snapped photographs, laughed, and made memories, which I shared on social media, not because I wanted my biological family to see them, but because I didn't care if they did. They were ghosts from a past I'd left behind. That night, as I sat on the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues that appeared to be photoshopped but were actually genuine, I reflected on everything I'd lost and acquired. I had lost parents who were meant to defend me, siblings who were supposed to be allies, and a family structure in which I had put my trust for 39 years. But I had acquired something more precious. Myself, unadulterated, unfiltered, and unable to tolerate injustice simply because it was perpetrated by relatives. I had obtained the capacity to set and enforce boundaries. To reject poison, even when it was disguised as love, and to pick my own family based on who individuals were rather than who I wished they would become. My phone rang with a text from my girlfriend asking if I wanted another drink. I smiled, rose up, and walked back to join those who had earned my presence. Behind me, the sun had completed setting. Darkness replaced light, just as my old family had been replaced by something greater. They wanted me to experience their alienation. Instead, I made certain they sensed my absence. And the absence they sensed was neither punishing nor spiteful. It was merely the logical outcome of their decisions. They had showed me that I didn't matter, so I stopped attempting to show otherwise. And in that place where family responsibility used to be, I'd created something genuine, something healthy, something that didn't need me to degrade myself in order to suit their story. 6 years later, they were still struggling with the aftermath of that vacation snapshot. Still facing litigation, family judgments, and communal ostracism. Still feeling the emptiness where I used to be, trying to figure out why family gatherings seemed so empty despite everyone else's presence. And I was on a beach in Thailand, surrounded by chosen family, finally seeing what unconditional love looked like. They would feel my absence indefinitely, just as they expected me to feel theirs. However, their absence had made me smaller. Mine had set me free. Just as my daughter was about to say I do, she stopped the wedding, turned to me in tears, and said, "He wants to control everything." My future son-in-law was constantly inquiring about the boundary of the property. Every single time he came to visit our ranch in Colorado, not just once, not twice, but every single time. While he was standing at the kitchen window with a cup of coffee in his hand, Evan Cole would look out over the meadow and toward the tree line, which marked the boundary of our land. "Jack, could you please tell me exactly where your property ends?" He would ask in a nonchalant manner, as if he were merely engaging in conversation. On the first occasion, I did not give it any thought. On the second occasion, I assumed that he was simply interested in learning more about rural life. At the fifth attempt, I felt a twisting sensation in my stomach. When she heard it, my daughter, Emily Caldwell, would laugh it off. Basically, he is just curious about ranch life. Father, you are aware of how city boys behave. However, prior to my retirement, I had worked as an engineer for 37 years. I'd acquired the skill of paying attention to patterns, and Evan's pattern was starting to become very obvious to me. When Emily brought Evan home for Thanksgiving some 8 months ago, that's when I first met Evan, Denver-based investment advisor who was 35 years old and had a spotless professional background. He complimented the cooking of my wife, Susan Caldwell, and asked thoughtful questions about our life on the ranch. Other than that, he said everything that was appropriate. He appeared to be spot on, perhaps even too spot on. Due to the rapid progression of cancer, Susan passed away 4 years ago. And all of a sudden I found myself living by myself in this large house on 185 acres that we had purchased 28 years ago for almost nothing. It was nothing more than scrubland back then. With Denver expanding its boundaries, real estate developers were circling like vultures at this point. I was presented with substantial offers. However, Susan had a dream about this. I was unable to convince her to give up her dream. The idea was not lost on Emily. As she had grown up in this place, she had assisted her mother in planting the garden that now bloomed beautifully every spring. Emily, who was concerned that I was becoming lonely after Susan's passing, made sure to check on me every weekend. I felt happy for her when she started dating Evan after meeting him at a networking event. I was happy for her situation. After everything that had happened with her ex-boyfriend, she deserved to be with someone. The proposal was quickly accepted. The proposal took place at a posh restaurant in Denver, after the couple had been dating for 5 months. I was astounded by Emily's excitement and she called me out. I made sure to say everything that a father ought to say. You are very welcome. It makes me happy for you. It appears that he is a wonderful individual. I couldn't stop thinking about the boundary of the property. The wedding was scheduled to take place at the ranch itself. At the beginning of October, Emily desired to tie the knot in the same place that her mother had cherished. Not only had she hired a planner, but she had also reserved a caterer and sent invitations to a total of 180 individuals. Evan was all smiles as he assisted with the arrangements and suggested that we expand the area designated for the ceremony. Jack. You should know that he did say that on a Saturday in August. If we were to do some tree cutting along the western edge of this area, we would be able to really open up this space. I mentioned that those trees served as a boundary for the property. Exactly. To what extent does your land actually extend back in time? And there it was once more. Following Evan and Emily's departure that evening, I sat down in my study and retrieved the property deed from its place. It was purchased in 1996 for $95,000, and it was 192 acres. To be able to afford it, Susan and I had been saving and cutting back for years. With development rights, it was now worth slightly more than $3.6 million, and possibly even more. I had never disclosed the precise amount to Emily. Despite the fact that she was aware that we owned the ranch in its entirety, and that I was enjoying a comfortable retirement, she was unaware of my patents. During the course of my career as an engineer, I had developed a small component that was being utilized in industrial refrigeration systems. Not exactly a glamorous situation, but the royalties had been coming in for the past 22 years. Along with that, I had approximately $7.4 million in assets, which I had acquired through astute investments. Clearly visible was the ranch in question. Emily had never inquired at any point about the remaining accounts, so they sat quietly. On purpose, I had lived a simple life, driving a truck that was 12 years old, wearing jeans and flannel, and repairing things on my own. As I watched Susan's wealthy cousins argue with each other over inheritances, I realized that money has the power to change people. It is preferable to be the quiet neighbor everyone does not suspect. On the other hand, Evan was now asking questions. In the morning of the following day, I contacted Eleanor Price, my attorney. I wanted to tell you that I needed you to look into someone for me. It has been stated that Evan Cole works as an investment advisor in Denver. Should I be concerned about Emily's fiancé, Jack? Simply a safety measure. Eleanor let out a sigh. On the other hand, Jack, if you have any concerns, you should discuss them with Emily. I will have someone conduct a background check. Not at this time. While it's possible that I'm wrong, I'm not wrong. The majority of the time, my instincts were correct. In the fourth day, Eleanor made a phone call. We need to get together, Jack. I was not on the phone. To get to her office in Boulder, I drove there. I was given a folder after she had closed the door behind me. It is true that Evan Cole is the person he claims to be. Investment advisor who holds a license. Currently employed by Cordell Financial Group. Record that is spotless. Free of any criminal record. But she produced yet another document. I instructed our investigator to conduct additional research. At least 3 times in the past, Evan has been engaged. 3 times to women who come from families with a lot of money. Immediately following his acquisition of access to the financial information of the family, all 3 engagements came to an abrupt end. There are no lawsuits or allegations. The timing is merely coincidental. I gripped the folder with both of my hands. Her name is Lauren Pierce, and she is the daughter of a CEO in the technology industry. The engagement lasted for a total of 6 months and came to an end 10 days after Evan traveled to a family gathering to discuss the Pierce estate. Her father is a real estate developer, and her name is Hannah Brooks. Hannah's father revised his will, and nobody filed a lawsuit, which led to the end of the engagement, which had lasted for 5 months. Jack, these families do not file lawsuits. In order to make problems disappear without a trace, they pay. On the other hand, I made a few phone calls. Evan had asked very specific questions about the structures of inheritance and property transfers, according to Lauren's father, who told me this information off the record regarding Evan. His suspicions that Evan was plotting something were not supported by any evidence. I had a sick feeling. Where does Emily stand? Emily is not in possession of any sizable assets of her own. Despite the fact that she makes a good living in marketing, she does not have anything that would be of interest to Evan. On the other hand, Eleanor paused. It is possible that Evan is gambling on future assets if he believes that Emily has a chance to inherit this ranch but does not know the fair market value of the property. Alternately, he has done research on you and is aware of more information than he is letting on. Eleanor gave a slight nod. Having a serious conversation with Emily is something I would recommend, but I was unable to do so. If there is no evidence. Emily was feeling ecstatic and overjoyed about the upcoming wedding. However, what if I was wrong? What would happen if I ended her relationship because of my paranoia? It was necessary for me to be certain. Evan stopped by to lend a hand with the preparations for the wedding that weekend. In order to get to the porch where I was sitting, he parked his Audi in the driveway and then walked up to the porch. When do you have a moment, Jack? I had something that I wanted to send your way. Certainly. In a state of genuine concern, he sat down. Emily and I have been discussing our future, finances, and planning, as well as other topics that are considered to be responsible adult topics. I am aware that this may be considered sensitive. It was a laugh. Since I am an investment advisor, I am unable to refrain from doing so. I was curious. Have you given any thought to estate planning? Making certain that everything is structured in the appropriate manner for Emily? My face remained unaffected, despite the fact that my blood became icy. I have composed a will. It is wonderful, but with a property such as this one, you might want to think about establishing a trust because it is more tax efficient. Allow me to be of assistance. There is no fee. I'm going to be close to the family. I will give it some thought. Additionally, Jack, I hope it is not too much trouble to tell you this, but at your age, you ought to also give some thought to making plans for long-term care. Suppose something were to take place. Who will be in charge of managing this premise? It takes a lot of work for one person to run a ranch. That was the case. It was probably the same script that he had used with Hannah's father and Lauren's father. The seed is planted, and access to the financials is gained. What comes next? Even though I was not aware of it just yet, I was going to find out. My voice was slow as I said, "You make a good point. To tell you the truth, during the next 10 days, why don't you and I schedule a meeting to discuss this matter? Each and every one of these tactics can be explained to me." Evan's eyes became bright with excitement. In a word, yes. Some materials will be brought by me. Certainly, we are able to improve your circumstances. Following his departure, I called Eleanor once more. I am in need of an observer. Just now, Jack, he inquired about my long-term care and estate planning. He's gaining a position. What he is actually planning is something I need to know. There was a brief pause in Eleanor's noise. A private investigator is someone I am familiar with. Extremely discreet. Employ them. A woman by the name of Monica Alvarez, who was the investigator, was absolutely worth every penny. The phone records, email patterns, and meeting schedules of Evan were all in her possession within a span of 9 days. She assured me that there was nothing illegal going on. It was just some good old-fashioned detective work together with some strategic social engineering. During the month of September, she called me on a Thursday evening. "You absolutely must listen to this, Mr. Caldwell." He had a routine service appointment at the dealership, and she had managed to sneak a recording device into Evan's vehicle during that appointment. She gave me her word that it was within the law because the device in question was technically a maintenance sensor that also happened to record audio. Maybe the attorneys will figure it out at a later time. While I was by myself in my study, I listened to the recording. The voice of Evan. I am, in fact, back at the ranch, this time playing the role of the lovely son-in-law. This old man is completely clueless. It's another voice. A male. What are your thoughts on the price? Jeremy. To Daniel. I have performed 3 separate checks on the county records. There were 192 acres, and he purchased them for a pittance in the year 96. We are talking about a minimum of $3.6 million thanks to the fact that Denver development has reached this far out. If we play it correctly, we will probably get closer to 4. Evan, the elderly gentleman, and Daniel. It is likely that he is loaded. Pay attention to this property. Free and unobstructed. For the past 6 years, he has been retired. Owns a home only. There is no debt. He is most likely sitting on investments worth several $1,000,000, and possibly even more. The daughter is completely clueless. In her mind, her father is nothing more than a typical middle-class retiree. To Daniel. So, what exactly is the play? This coming October, Evan, I will be marrying Emily. During the first year, you should focus on being the ideal husband and the most devoted son-in-law. I need to convince him to trust me. Perhaps you could obtain a power of attorney for financial matters under the guise of assisting. Elderly man lives by himself. Who can foresee what might take place? A mental decline, a fall, or an accident could have occurred. Before you know it, he is already residing in a nursing home. Emily will inherit everything, and I will be in charge of managing his affairs. The divorce will be finalized before she is able to comprehend what took place, and I will receive my share of the settlement. He laughed out loud. Evan, you are a snobbish and icy person. I'm a businessman who is very practical. A waste of time was Lauren's presence. Her father got the hang of it too quickly. Hannah was showing signs of improvement, but her grandfather had everything in a trust. To which one? This one is absolutely flawless. A guy from a small town. When it comes to safeguarding assets, there is no maturity. It is almost as if he is requesting to be taken. I stopped the recording from playing. I could feel my hands shaking. Without fear, but with rage instead. On the other hand, Emily would not benefit from anger. I needed to have a good mind. In the event of an emergency, I summoned Eleanor and Monica to a meeting. For now, I have the evidence. A plan is required of me. A total of 2 times, Eleanor listened to the recording. The situation is a criminal conspiracy. We have the option of going to the authorities and informing Emily that her fiancé is a con artist just under a month before the wedding, which will be attended by 180 guests. She will never forgive me if I do not have evidence that is beyond reasonable doubt. She will believe that I am attempting to exert control over her life. A literal admission was made by him that he was planning your possible murder, Jack. Possibilities. It was not what he said he would do himself. A competent attorney would dismantle that argument. I need him to make a confession in front of witnesses and incriminate himself. Monica showed her eyebrows while she was at the wedding. Would you like to come clean about him during the ceremony? It is what I want Emily to hear. I would like for her to have a clear understanding of the kind of person she was about to marry, and I would also like for there to be 180 witnesses, so that he cannot get out of it lying. For the next 2 weeks, we focused on getting ready. Throughout the ranch property, Monica installed a number of miniature cameras. Eleanor drafted several legal documents that would safeguard Emily and me in the event of any unforeseen circumstances. I pretended to be Evan's future father-in-law, a trustworthy individual, and we had a meeting to talk about estate planning. He arrived at my office carrying a briefcase that was stuffed with forms. All right, Jack. There are some documents that I have prepared that will really make everything more streamlined. Using this power of attorney form, I will be able to assist you in managing things in the event that you ever require my assistance. Your will has been updated to include the establishment of a trust, with Emily serving as the primary beneficiary. However, I will serve as trustee to ensure that everything is organized in the appropriate manner. The fact that I pretended to study the documents is beneficial when it comes to taxes. In a word, yes. You could save a significant amount of money. My head slowly nodded. In all honesty, Evan, I've been thinking about it. I am beginning to feel overwhelmed by this location. As you are correct in saying, it is possible that the time has come to initiate changes. His eyes shone with a gleam. It's great that you're taking a pragmatic approach to this matter, but I have a question about something. Your inquiries regarding the boundaries of the property continue. Is that the case? He did not miss a single beat. I am just considering the long term, Jack. We might decide to sell off some of the parcels, but we will keep the house and a few acres if Emily is the one who inherits this property. There is no point in retaining land that we will not use. If I were Emily's husband, I would want to assist her in making sound choices regarding her finances. Well, Emily. And I. I cracked a grin. Obviously. Family is beneficial to family. The day he left, he believed he had triumphed. I gave him time to think about it. Emily made the observation that I appeared to be distracted 10 days before the wedding. Are you feeling okay, Dad? You have been very quiet as of late. Just wishing that your mother could be here to witness this moment. I'm thinking about her. The hug was from Emily. It is true, Dad. Although I miss her as well, I believe that she would be pleased for me. Evan is a lovely person. Even though I wanted to tell her everything at that moment, I was unable to do so. It was necessary for her to personally hear it and comprehend it in its entirety. She would always wonder if I had manipulated the situation if I did not handle it properly. I'm sure she would be, I said, feeling terrible about the lie I had just told. Daniel, Evan's friend. Daniel Evans. Through Monica's surveillance photographs, I was able to identify him. At the time, he was reportedly Evan's best man and was staying at a hotel in the city. They were laughing together and exuding self-assurance as I watched them at the rehearsal dinner. Evan offered a toast to the occasion. Jack, who has accepted me into his family, and Emily, who has made me the luckiest man alive, I would like to express my gratitude. Things are going to go wonderfully tomorrow. The applause was unanimous. I smiled and raised my glass to my lips. It was a wonderful day for the wedding. The weather in Colorado, the sunshine in the early part of October, the aspen leaves turning gold, and the mountains standing out against the blue sky. Susan would have liked it very much. On our lawn, each of the folding chairs was occupied by guests. Emily's insistence on having an arbor that was decked out with late summer flowers was finally realized. The pearls that belonged to Emily's mother were placed at her throat as I walked Emily down the makeshift aisle with her arm through mine. She appeared to be in a good mood. Having knowledge of what was going to happen broke my heart. I love you, Dad, she mumbled in a low voice. I love you as well, my darling's love. My seat in the front row was reserved for me at all times. The ceremony got underway. During the beginning of his speech, the officiant spoke about love and commitment. Evan smiled as he stood at the altar, looking absolutely stunning in his tuxedo. After that, Emily's hand moved to her bouquet, just as Evan was about to say I do during the exchange of vows. Evan was about to exchange his vows. I was given a small piece of folded paper that she had pulled out of her pocket. When she looked at me, her eyes were filled with tears. I have opened it. In her handwriting, there were 3 words. Help me out, Dad. Everything came to a halt. Her gaze caught mine. I noticed that she was staring at Evan with a pale face, and I realized that she was filled with fear. I got to my feet. Please halt. Discontinue the ceremony. The people in the crowd murmured. Evan made a turn. What is it, Jack? This is Emily. My tone of voice remained unruffled. What exactly is the matter? She inhaled deeply with trembling. In a daze, the words came out of my mouth. You can hear him. In order to take him by surprise, I went to his hotel room the night before. In addition, I overheard him discussing with Daniel how he was going to. She was unable to finish everything. The color returned to Evan's face. You are being completely ridiculous, Emily. You have a misunderstanding. During our wedding, you made a statement that you were going to make sure that my father was involved in an accident. After you had obtained power of attorney, you stated that it would be simple. Her tone was shattered. You claimed that I was a moron and that I wouldn't figure it out until after you had already purchased everything. The crowd went into a frenzy. Shouts, gasps, and people standing up are heard. Taking Emily's arm, Evan grabbed it. You are completely insane. It's nerves on the day of the wedding. I made progress, but 2 other men were far ahead of me. In a matter of seconds, the county sheriff and a deputy, both of whom were friends of mine and had been sitting in the audience wearing plain clothes, had Evan's arms behind his back. You are being detained for questioning regarding a possible conspiracy to commit violence as well as a conspiracy to commit fraud, according to Evan Cole, who is the sheriff making the announcement. Dan made an attempt to flee. In the time it took Monica to tackle him, he had not even made it past the driveway. As a precautionary measure, she had been waiting by the cars. The subsequent 90 minutes were total anarchy. Attendees are being requested to provide statements. Evan hysterically yelling about fabricated allegations and legal actions. During my embrace, Emily was crying. On her arrival, Eleanor brought with her the recordings, the evidence files, and everything else that we had gathered. In the end, the police were able to remove both Daniel and Evan. The guests gradually dispersed, with some of them being supportive while others were simply eager to gossip. After the dinner had been served, the caterers packed it up. Emily and I were still dressed in our wedding attire as we sat on the porch steps and watched the sun go down with the mountains in the background. Under her breath, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Dad. My apologies for not informing you sooner." I was completely taken aback when I overheard them talking. I had known them for 2 days. It was something I didn't want to be true. I kept saying to myself that perhaps I had misunderstood. I went through with all of the preparations, and I was going to marry him, and you were the one who gave me that note at the very last possible moment. Perhaps there was a reason for this. Oh, Emily, why? Her eyes were wiped clean. Simply because I was fearful. However, what if I was wrong? If I were to ruin my own wedding due to a misunderstanding, what would happen? However, as I stood there about to say I do, I suddenly became aware that I was unable to do so. I couldn't marry someone I didn't trust. So, I wrote the note, and I prayed you'd understand. I put my arm around her. I did understand. I've understood for months. You knew? I suspected. I had him investigated. I have recordings of him and Daniel planning this whole thing. I was going to expose him today, even if you hadn't given me that note. Emily stared at me. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have believed me. You'd have thought I was being a controlling father who didn't trust your judgment. You needed to discover it yourself. Come to your own conclusion. I was just there to back you up when you did. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're someone who believes the best in people. That's a good quality, even when people don't deserve it. Evan is a professional con artist. He's fooled women and families before. You're not the first. And probably not the last. What happens now? Now, the district attorney will review the evidence. Evan and Daniel will likely face charges for conspiracy and fraud. You'll give your statement. We'll deal with canceling wedding gifts and apologizing to guests. Life goes on. We sat in silence for a while. Then Emily asked, "Dad, how rich are you?" I laughed. Why do you want to know? Because Evan kept saying you were loaded. I always thought we were comfortable but normal. Now I'm wondering what I don't know. Your mother and I bought this ranch for $95,000 in 1996. It's now worth just over $3.6 million. I also hold several patents from my engineering work that pay royalties, and I've invested carefully for nearly 3 decades. Total assets approximately $7.4 million. Emily's jaw dropped. $7.4 million, and you drive that old truck and wear clothes from Walmart. Money doesn't impress me, Emily. Your mother and I grew up poor. We knew what money could do to families, how it could poison relationships. We decided to live modestly, enjoy what we had, and not make wealth our identity. I wanted you to grow up normal, not as some rich kid who thought she was better than everyone else. And my inheritance is already in a trust that takes effect when I die. You'll be comfortable, but it's structured so no spouse can touch it without your explicit consent. I set that up years ago after watching your Aunt Karen's divorce. I wanted to protect you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I wish Mom was here." Me too, sweetheart. Me too. 4 months later, Evan and Daniel were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted financial exploitation of an at-risk adult, and a handful of other crimes. Evan took a plea deal. 6 years probation. Full restitution of our investigation costs. And a permanent ban on working in financial services. Daniel got 30 months for his role. Emily moved back to the ranch for a while, recovering. She went to therapy, dealt with the betrayal, slowly rebuilt herself. She started dating again eventually, but she was more careful now, sadder, but wiser. As for me, I'm still here in the ranch house, still driving that old truck, still wearing flannel, but I did make one change. I had Susan's garden expanded, planted new roses, added a stone bench with her name on it. Sometimes Emily and I sit there in the evening, watching the sunset, and I tell her stories about her mother, about the woman who believed in buying land instead of fancy cars, in planting gardens instead of showing off jewelry, in building a life instead of maintaining an image. "Dad," Emily said one evening, Do you ever regret not being more open about the money? If I'd known, maybe I would have been more suspicious of Evan from the start. Maybe. Or maybe you'd have attracted more Evans, wondering if everyone who showed interest was after your inheritance. The way we did it, you got to be yourself. You got to make your own choices. And when things went wrong, you had the strength to ask for help. That's worth more than any amount of money. She leaned against me. I love you, Dad. I love you, too, sweetheart. The sun dropped behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. Somewhere in the meadow, a bird called. Susan's garden bloomed, wild and beautiful, just the way she'd wanted it. Money can't buy moments like this, but it can buy the security to enjoy them without fear. That's the real value of wealth. Not what it displays, but what it protects. And I'd protect my daughter with every dollar I had for as long as I lived. My wife stayed silent when her son called me a loser. Later I found she'd opened credit in my name, so I stopped everything. I didn't raise my voice when my stepson yelled, "He ruined my life," as he stood up red-faced in the church fellowship hall. I simply placed a simple manila folder on the table that folds. The room fell silent. I'm Frank Delaney, a 59-year-old man who grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana South. Throughout my professional life, I have hauled freight for UPS on early mornings, night runs, and other types of jobs where your hands get a touch dry and crack no matter how much lotion you apply. I'm not ostentatious. I have never been. I prefer to pay my payments on time, have a clean truck, and have black coffee. When the sump pump fails or someone needs a ride at 3:15 inches the morning, I'm the one that comes over. And that was sufficient for a very long time. The fragrance of coffee that had been left on the warmer for too long and crock-pot chili filled the fellowship hall. Plastic forks and paper plates were available. A small amount of fruit punch had been spilled by someone's child close to the coat rack. Even though it was chilly outside in February, I could hear the faint sound of the old ceiling fans. Winter in Indiana has a way of eating away at your bones. The kind of cold that makes you feel more mature than you actually are. My stepson, Tyler Vaughn, stood approximately 12 feet away from me, his shoulders squared as if he wanted to fight, 27 years old. Slender, with nice hair and teeth, he was the type of child who had heard the phrase potential all his life, and used it as if it were a rent check. He said loudly enough for everyone in the room, "You don't get to act like you're the victim. You took everything." I didn't take anything," I calmly remarked. "My car, my phone, my apartment." Even I was shocked by my voice. It wasn't unsteady. It wasn't upset. It was simply level. I stopped spending money on things that I had never been able to afford. Tyler stared at my wife, Elaine Parker, like a child seeking a referee. With her hands encircling a foam cup as if it were the only solid object in the world, Elaine stood by the coffee maker. She remained silent. She has been doing that a lot lately. My narrative didn't start that day in the hallway. A long, silent path came to an end. But you have to accompany me back to the dinner table where I discovered the value of my quiet if you want to know why a room full of churchgoers fell silent over a manila folder. The roads were still busy on this Friday night, the kind that makes Fort Wayne feel like it's half asleep. Elaine texted me after I finished my run. "Roadhouse in Texas. 6:45. Tyler will arrive. Don't start anything. Please." I hadn't begun anything in years, so that statement, "Please don't start anything," already made my stomach turn. I had been ingesting substances. I had been doing that. With a large parking lot, eye-catching signs, and the aroma of fried food wafting into the chilly air each time the door opened. Texas Roadhouse was situated off a strip of stores that resembled every other Midwestern strip. The wind blew across the lot in a horrible sideways direction. As I entered, I could feel it go beneath my collar. It was noisy and warm inside. People laughing, servers scuttling between tables with baskets of rolls, country music, the kind of setting you're meant to unwind in. Elaine was already there, wearing her gray mirror fleece, her hair pushed back, and the lines around her eyes that I used to find endearing. Wearing a brand new hoodie and pricey sneakers, Tyler sat across from her, tapping his phone as if he were the reason the world was running late. When I slid into the booth, he hardly looked up. I said, "Hey." Elaine said, "Hey," as if she were ticking a box. Tyler remained silent. He simply grinned and continued to scroll. We were given menus by a server. I didn't require one. I received the same thing every time. Baked potato, side salad, and sirloin. The chicken creatures pleased Elaine. Like he was proud, Tyler ordered something with more bacon. It was small talk at start. Elaine inquired about my route. Near Warsaw. I said, the roads were slippery. Tyler discussed a significant online opportunity he had with a friend. Did you hear from your dad this week? Elaine gently inquired. At that moment, Tyler relaxed as if he had been anticipating it. Yeah, he responded, perhaps loud enough for the table next to us to hear. Dad is doing quite well. He recently received a new lease. Nice location. Additionally, he has a new girlfriend. He gave me that expression as if he was ready to tell something he had been holding back. Elaine's gaze briefly shifted to me before settling on her water glass. Tyler bent over. Are you curious about Dad's words? I can't believe Mom settled. He remarked. The heat began to rise up my neck. It was more akin to shame than anger, like if someone had poured warm soda down my back. Tyler. Elaine muttered. And he waved her away. No, I mean it. He looked directly at me and said, come on, Mom. You act like this is some nice little family. My dad isn't a loser, but you are. The word loser lingered. Somewhere behind me, all I could hear for a moment was a fork scraping across a plate. The sound of ice clinking in a glass. The background music is a country song. Life continues. I gave Elaine a look. I held out. She didn't even raise her head. She gazed at her water glass as if it contained instructions. Tyler's remarks didn't have the same impact as her quiet. Right then, I could have lost it. I had the option to get up and leave. I had the option of saying something scathing. However, I didn't, as I had been the man who maintained order for years. The man who took in the sharp edges, so that everyone else may continue to smile. So I took my usual action. I said nothing. As if I needed it, I picked up my menu. I used my nose to breathe. Don't make a scene. I told myself. Don't give them an excuse to portray you negatively. Tyler grinned as if he had won. Let's just eat. Elaine finally whispered, and I nodded as if I hadn't just been killed in a booth with neon beer signs. However, something changed inside. It feels more like a bolt loosening than a big movie scene. Quietly beginning to give. Something that had been keeping things together. The wind hit us once more in the parking lot as we were leaving. With her arms crossed, Elaine moved forward. Tyler opened his shiny-rimmed, late-model automobile, which he handled like a trophy. His credit was so bad that I had signed for the same automobile. I had insured the same vehicle. I had seen him drive the identical car as if it didn't matter if it lived or died. He didn't even wish me a good night. He entered and exited as if the regulations didn't exist. Elaine climbed into my vehicle. My previous Silverado was sturdy, tidy, and uncomplicated. That's how I kept it. There was a slight fragrance of motor oil and coffee in the cab. My life in a nutshell. For a few miles, we drove in silence. Warm air was blown over my hands on the steering wheel by the heater. Elaine concluded by saying that he has experienced a lot. I exhaled. I have to. She didn't respond. I glanced at her at a red light. Do you believe that was acceptable? What did he say? Her jaw stiffened as she looked straight ahead. Please. Frank. I'm worn out. I'm not interested in fighting. Her gift was that. Quiet. Always keep quiet when it's important. I faced the road once more. The light shifted. We continued driving. I entered the kitchen after we arrived home and gazed at the small pile of mail on the counter. A credit card offer, an electric bill, Meijer coupons, and everyday living. It felt like betrayal, even though nothing in that pile appeared to be it. Without saying another word, Elaine left into the bedroom. Behind her, the door clicked slightly. With the slight buzz of the TV in the living room and the hum of the refrigerator, I stood by myself in the kitchen. A meteorologist is discussing wind chill. It was a constant, almost calming sound. I finally acknowledged what I had been avoiding for years with that steady sound. It was more than just contempt. They were using me. Because Tyler didn't suddenly label me a loser. He knew I would accept it. So he called me that. Since he was aware that I would continue to cover the expenses that maintained his life comfortable. Because every time he stepped over a line, he'd seen his mother turn away. He had also discovered that there were no repercussions. Not authentic ones. I opened the drawer in the small desk near the corridor that evening after Elaine had gone to sleep. The drawer of vital papers. It had been months since I had touched it. Titles, insurance cards, and receipts that I couldn't discard because I still harbored the hope that someone might one day comment, "Wow, Frank, you really did a lot." were all within. I took out the folder containing Tyler Vaughn's automobile, my name on the documents, my loan signature, and my accountability. The home was silent as I sat at the kitchen table with that folder. I didn't have trembling hands. They remained stable. And I didn't feel like a loser for the first time in a long time. I felt like a finished man. I woke up earlier than my alarm the following morning. That wasn't out of the ordinary. I have a lot of experience with night routes. The clock in my body didn't trust sleep. However, I refrained from checking my phone for any missed calls or messages from Tyler Vaughn this time. I listened to the house while I laid there. There was a deep grumble as the furnace turned on. A pickup cranked up and rumbled off somewhere down the block. Even Elaine Parker's breathing was next to me. Facing the wall. Silently, I rose and made my way to the kitchen. My feet were on a chilly floor. As usual, I poured myself a cup of black coffee and took a seat at the table where I had laid out Tyler Vaughn's documents the previous evening. Everything was crisper, less dramatic, and more honest in the daylight. I wasn't upset. I was shocked by that. I sensed a sense of clarity, the kind that comes after a long journey. When the exit sign you've been waiting for appears at last. Once more, I opened the manila folder. My name, the car title, simple and uncomplicated. Insurance declarations page, my address, my policy number, phone plan, family account, 6 lines mine, paying for all of them, storage unit contract, my signature, my checking account, apartment lease, amendment, me designated as co-signer, the responsible party. It was not a single major event. Every month, it was death by 1,000 tiny withdrawals. I reflected on the past few years. At the time, the excuses had always seemed plausible. Only until he is able to stand again. Until his credit gets better. Only till everything calms down. They didn't. I put on a jacket and drove to the VFW at around 9:30. There were areas of dirty snow heaped along the perimeter of the parking lot, which was less than half full. It smelled like floor cleaning and old coffee inside. The bartender gave me a nod. I sat down at a table by the window and waved him away. A few minutes later, Walt Harrigan entered. He walked steadily but slowly, hands like cinder blocks, white hair cropped close, retired teamster. When I originally recruited him, he was a union representative, the type of man who could clear his throat and close a room. He lowered himself into the chair across from me and remarked, "You look like hell." I said, "I feel better than I look." He arched an eyebrow. "That's novel." I told him about Elaine Parker peering into her water as if it were safer than looking at me, about the supper, and about the word loser. Walt didn't say anything. With his fingers encircling his mug, he simply listened. He gave me a single nod when I was done. "You know why it hurt so much?" I half joked, because it was true. "No," he replied. "He was able to say it because you helped teach him." That hit the ground hard. I turned to face my hands. "I don't want to make a big deal out of nothing." Walt reclined. "You're not talking about blowing anything up, Frank Delaney. You're referring to leaving the blast zone." I let out a breath. "He's going to fall hard if I stop paying for things." Walt looked directly into my eyes. "He's not being punished by you. The cover-up is being stopped by you. Being harsh is not the same as refusing to make someone feel at ease when they treat you disrespectfully." I took a time to consider that. "How about Elaine Parker?" I inquired. Walt gave a shrug. "She must determine whether her silence is a sign of cowardice or loyalty." His remarks stuck with me on the way home, preventing the cover-up. That was how it felt. It seemed as if I had been smoothing over visible fissures. That day, I didn't accomplish anything. I was concerned about that. No impulsive actions, no flamboyant phone calls. Like every other Saturday, I went to the grocery store, loaded up the truck, returned home, and folded laundry. Elaine Parker observed me intently, as if she sensed a shift, but she was reluctant to inquire. "You've been quiet," she said that evening. It nearly made me giggle. "Keep quiet." "That was wealthy." I said, "I've been thinking." She gave a nod. "Regarding yesterday night." "A lot of nights," I remarked. "About what I am and am not accountable for." End quote. She clenched her jaw. "Please don't start making things more difficult, Frank. Tyler Vaughn is already having difficulties." I glanced at her, then took a closer look. "I am, too." Her mouth parted, then shut again. Once more, silence. I went to bed early. It was difficult to fall asleep. I took a legal paper and sat back at the kitchen table on Sunday morning to begin jotting things down. Like a checklist, but not a hit list. Dates, account numbers, notice requirements, signature requirements, and decisions that were up to me. I wasn't upset. I used caution. I messaged Tyler Vaughn once. Only one. Hey. I will no longer be paying for the phone plan or auto insurance starting next month. I'll let you know the precise date so you can make the switch. Just a heads up, this isn't a fight. He took a while to reply. I copied Elaine Parker on another message I sent. I'm establishing some financial boundaries. I want you to understand that this isn't about power. Respect is at issue. For hours, that one remained unread. By nightfall, Tyler Vaughn finally responded, "Are you serious?" "Yes," I typed back. 3 dots appeared, vanished, and then reappeared. "I guess I know where I stand," I said. I waited for the customary twinge of guilt as I gazed at the screen. It never materialized. Rather, I sensed a solid sensation in my chest. It's more like alignment than alleviation. My behavior was consistent with what I had been ingesting for years. Elaine Parker gave it another go that evening. She remarked, "You're overreacting," from the doorway of the bedroom. That was not his intention. I tied my boots without looking up. He said what he meant to say. She folded her arms. "This family will be embarrassed by you." I got up. "No, I will no longer pretend." She observed me as if I were a stranger. Perhaps I was. The air was clear and crisp when I went for my nighttime run. I inhaled deeply before getting inside the automobile. The cab light came on and went off. My phone buzzed as I turned onto the street. Tyler Vaughn sent a text message. "Elaine Parker won't pardon you if you do this." After reading it once, I placed the phone in the cup holder, face down. I drove into the night without being burdened by anyone else for the first time in years. And I had a gut feeling that the truth would become apparent as soon as I stopped funding the illusion. It was a quiet, gray Monday morning, the kind of winter morning when the sky appears to be undecided. After my run, I went to sleep for a few hours. When I woke up, I heard Elaine Parker moving around the house and opening and closing cabinets a bit too loudly. I remained silent. She didn't either. I returned to the kitchen table with my legal pad by midday. After sleeping on it and mentally reviewing it twice, it was time to tackle the tedious yet crucial part. This was not an act of retaliation. It had to do with protocol. The insurance company was contacted first. The woman on the line knew my name because I had been with them for more than 22 years. She tapped the keys and said, "Frank Delaney. How may I help you today?" With effect from the following billing cycle, I stated, "I need to remove a vehicle from my policy. I'll also need an email with a written confirmation." "No issue," she replied. "It's the 2021 sedan. Just to be clear, that's the one." She hesitated. "My stepson is currently the driver of that car." "I'll be notifying him," I said. "All right," she said, in a professional manner. "You have all the rights you need." It was like a tiny hand on my shoulder when you said, "Within your rights." The phone plan came next. The same thing. Dates and confirmations. No shouting or speeches. In order to prevent Tyler Vaughn from claiming that I caught him off guard, I requested the precise time the service would end. The storage unit comes next. I personally drove over, the wind slicing through my jacket as I went through the parking lot. The manager was a young man with eyes that were tired. I presented the contract and my ID to him. I said, "I need to set up a supervised access window for the secondary user." He nodded and said, "And then I want the lock code changed." It occurs frequently. I was always surprised by that. I had half of my list crossed off by mid-afternoon. I was exhausted, but not as sick to my stomach as I had anticipated. It felt more like I had cleaned a garage all day. Dusty. Exhausting. But sincere labor. At approximately 4:40, Tyler Vaughn finally made a call. "What on earth is this?" he yelled. "I just received an email from my insurance company." I said, "I promised to give notice." He said, "You're screwing me. I need the car for work, as you are aware." "That part's no longer on me," he remarked. "You need insurance to drive it. This is your way of punishing me." I reclined in my chair and gazed at the kitchen wall scuff mark. "I'm taking this action because I'm tired of paying for things that make me feel disrespected." Silence fell for a beat. Then he laughed bitterly and sharply. "You're really picking this hill, wow." "No," I replied. "You made the decision to call me a loser." He hung up after swearing. With my phone still in my hand, and my heart pounding more forcefully than I liked, I sat there for a while. The part I had been dreading, the point at which doubt tries to creep in, was finally here. I nearly gave him a call back. Nearly. Rather, I picked up the apartment lease, which was the last item on my list. It took longer this time. I informed the property management office over the phone that, in accordance with the terms of the contract, I was a co-signer who had to withdraw. The woman explained the procedure and sent me a form via email. She stated, "He'll have to prove himself or provide a new guarantor. We'll send out a notice until then." "Comprehensive," I replied. I slid the printed email into the folder along with the others. Elaine Parker finally spoke that night. She stood in the doorway with her arms folded and remarked, "You've really done it." "I'm doing it," I clarified. She gave a headshake. "Frank." He called me crying. I gave her a look. Was what he said to me mentioned? She turned her head away. "You are aware of the way he becomes anxious." I replied, "So do I. I simply don't get away with it." She spoke up. "You're causing him anxiety." I didn't raise mine. "He is 27 years old." She looked at me as if she hadn't seen me before. Perhaps she didn't. Tyler Vaughn's panic began to manifest that evening. A text first. "I don't have a ride, so my boss says I'm going to be late again." Then another. "I have 3 days, according to storage, to retrieve my belongings. Are you happy now, then?" I didn't respond. 3 days later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was the office in the apartment. "Mr. Your stepson did not meet the requalification requirements, Delaney," the woman said. "We've sent out a notice. Just to keep you updated." "Thanks," I replied. I noticed Tyler Vaughn's car parked crookedly in our driveway that same afternoon, with a bright orange notice tucked under the wiper. No insurance. I was not arrogant when I saw it. I was worn out. "You didn't have to let it get this far," Elaine Parker said softly as she sat on the edge of the bed later that evening. I switched off the light. "It came this far a long time ago. I simply stopped acting as though it hadn't." The consequences finally lined up 9 days after the dinner. Tyler Vaughn's job was terminated. Just an attendance policy with no room for excuses. Nothing dramatic. By morning, the car had been legally towed after being left on the street without insurance. His phone died. The storage unit was locked. Not having a job, a car, or a place to live. That morning, as I watched steam rise from my coffee while standing at the kitchen sink, I experienced a twist in my stomach. Not contentment, not regret. Accountability. The mail then arrived. A certified envelope bearing my name and the bank logo in the corner was among the flyers and bills. I placed it on the table, signed for it, and just stared. It had been years since I had opened a new account. I read the first line after breaking the seal. "We're getting in touch with you because of some recent activity on your account." I had the uneasy feeling that I was going to find out what Tyler Vaughn had lost that week, and my chest went cold. It wasn't just him who had been using my name as if it were his own. I took a while to open the envelope. With my fingers resting on the edge of the paper as if it might bite me if I moved too quickly, I stood at the table. It was Elaine Parker taking a shower. The house hummed as usual. Furnace and refrigerator. The wall clock ticked faintly. Common noises, the ones that typically indicate everything is all right. I used my thumb to cut a hole in the envelope and took out the letter. Our credit union sent it. Professional, courteous, and using language that subtly conveys that everything is fine while acting as though nothing is. Regarding recent activity on an account that was registered in my name, they were contacting me. 5 months ago, a store credit line was established. Maximum balance. Late payments. I took a seat. This time, I read it more slowly. The dates coincided with my travel nights. Elaine Parker stated that she was simply exhausted at night. Tyler Vaughn had been working things out at night. I looked over the fine print. My address, phone number, and social security number were all on the application, but my signature was missing. At last, my hands began to shake. Elaine Parker stopped when she saw my face after entering the kitchen with a towel wrapped around her hair. "What's the matter?" she inquired. I moved the letter over the table. She picked it up, glanced at it, and then gave me the look as if I had just accused her of a horrible thing. "What's this?" I said, "That's what I'm asking." With a sigh, she put the letter aside. "You make assumptions, Frank." "Elaine, whose store card is this?" She paused. Even though it was only a split second, I had mastered the art of identifying a crucial pause from years of transporting cargo. "It isn't anything," she stated. Tyler Vaughn required assistance. "Just something to help him get through it." "You call me by name." She crossed her arms. "You always assist him." I got to my feet. My voice was strong, but my knees were weak. Lying is not the same as helping. Opening accounts behind my back is not the definition of helping. She turned to face the floor. "I assumed you wouldn't mind." No matter how much Tyler Vaughn insulted me, that sentence hit me harder. She said again, softer. "I didn't think you'd mind," as if that improved the situation. "You never refuse." At that moment, something broke. Just a crisp snap inside my chest, no noise, no drama. "That's all," I said. I got that by remaining silent. At last, she looked directly into my eyes. "Please don't exaggerate this, Frank." One sharp, ugly laugh came out of my mouth. "In my name, you open credit. It is merely a card," she stated. "We can settle it." "We." Once more. That word. I grabbed my keys. "I'm heading out." "Where?" I said, to make sure there aren't any more surprises. With my hands firmly gripping the wheel, I drove to the credit union. It was a low, white sky, the kind that weighs you down. It smelled like printer ink and carpet cleaner inside. Mary Ann Cole, a loan officer who appeared to be around my age, didn't flinch when I told her what I had discovered. With a frown on her face, she brought up my file. "There are several," she remarked softly. My stomach fell. "My information is linked to 2 store cards, and 1 short-term installment loan that are all open within 8 months. None of this was authorized by me." "I believe you. We see this a lot," she said. She guided me through the steps, explaining that there were family situations that hurt more than the numbers. Credit freeze paperwork and fraud affidavits. "Just careful, slow work to stop the bleeding, nothing spectacular." Elaine Parker was waiting for me when I arrived home. "Are you truly acting in this way?" Eyes wide, she questioned, accusing it of fraud. I declared, "I'm stopping it and I'm calling it what it is." Her voice broke. "You will destroy him. You 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 will destroy him." I gave a headshake. "You've already shown him that it's acceptable." Ampre-4ing. Ampre-4. Ampre-4ing. Ampre-4. I slept on the couch that night. I needed time to reflect without someone telling me about my own life, not because she asked. I discovered the messages the following day. I wasn't prying. A notification appeared on her tablet, which glowed on the coffee table. In the preview, I saw my name. "Frank will take care of it. He does it every time." It was sent months ago from Tyler Vaughn to Elaine Parker. At first, I didn't read any more. I felt as though I had been struck deep inside as I sat there with the tablet glowing in my hands. It got worse when I scrolled. "This month, don't worry about the rent. Simply write it under Frank's name on the card. He detests conflict. He refuses to speak." I carefully put the tablet down. I was seated at the table when Elaine Parker arrived home from work. In front of me, the manila folder was open. The printed messages, the statements, and the letters from the credit union. In the doorway, she paused. She said, "You read my messages." I said, "You used my name." The gap between us was greater than the room as we stood there. She claimed, I was defending my son. "And who was keeping me safe?" I inquired. She didn't respond. I realized then that there was no peaceful way out of this situation. What had been done in silence could not be undone by swallowing it. I didn't shout. I made no threats. I told her exactly what was going to happen. "I'm separating our finances," I said. "I'm freezing my credit. I'm documenting everything. And I'm done covering for Tyler Vaughn. I'm separating our finances." Her complexion turned pallid. "You're going to humiliate us." I gave a headshake. "I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm done lying." She sank into a chair. "You're choosing this over your family." I picked up the folder and closed it. "No, I'm choosing myself." For the first time that night, I didn't feel strong. I felt empty, like a house after a storm, from standing but stripped down to the studs. But I also felt something else, a certainty I hadn't felt in years. The next step wouldn't be private. And the truth, once it had room to breathe, was going to speak for itself. The fellowship hall at Streetmark sat behind the brick church like it always had, low ceiling, beige walls, folding tables lined up and in. On Sundays like this, it filled up with crockpots and paper plates, and people who'd known each other long enough to stop pretending. It was the kind of place where the truth didn't echo. It just settled. Elaine Parker insisted we go. She said it would look bad if we didn't. A potluck fundraiser for the roof repairs. Everyone from her side of the family would be there. Neighbors, too. People from work, people who smiled and nodded and thought they knew us. I agreed to go because I knew something she didn't. I wasn't afraid of how things would look anymore. The hall smelled like chili and baked ham. Someone had brought deviled eggs, coffee brewed in big metal urns that hissed softly. The hum of conversation filled the room, broken now and then by laughter. Tyler Vaughn was already there when we walked in. He stood near the long table of food, shoulders tight, jaw set, talking fast to anyone who would listen. I could hear my name float through the air, carried on the edge of accusation. That man took everything, he said, left me with nothing, no warning, just pulled the rug out. People nodded. Some looked uncomfortable. A few glanced my way. Elaine Parker stayed close to me, her hand hovering near my arm like she might grab it if I bolted or if I spoke. Tyler Vaughn saw us, and his face lit up, not with relief, but with anger sharpened by an audience. There he is, he said loud. Mr. Responsible. The room quieted without anyone meaning it to. That's how it happens in small places. People stop chewing. They stop clinking forks. They wait. You want to explain to everyone why you ruined my life? Tyler Vaughn demanded. I didn't answer right away. I set the manila folder down on the nearest table. Plain. No labels. No drama. I didn't ruin anything, I said. But if you want to talk about it, we can. Tyler Vaughn laughed bitter. Oh, now you want to talk? Yes, I replied. Now, he threw his hands out. He took my car, my phone, got me kicked out of my apartment. I lost my job because of him. I said, my job because of him. I nodded once. You lost your job because you didn't show up on time. That got a few murmurs. Elaine Parker shifted beside me. Frank. I held up a hand, not to stop her, but to steady myself. I opened the folder. Inside were copies. Clean, neat, the kind of paperwork no one argues with for long. I slid the first page forward so it faced the table. This is the car title, my name. Then another. Insurance policy. Also mine. Another phone plan. I paid it every month. Tyler Vaughn's face reddened. You're twisting it. I kept my voice even. This is the storage contract, my signature. Salve. Someone near the back cleared their throat. And this, I said, placing the last set of papers down, is the lease addendum. I co-signed because your credit couldn't. Tyler Vaughn's voice cracked. So what, you helped me? You don't get to yank it all away. I looked at him, then really looked. Not the angry kid, the scared one underneath. I didn't yank anything, I said. I gave notice. I followed the contracts. I stopped paying for things that weren't mine to carry. That's a lie, he shouted. You did it to hurt me. I took a breath. I did it because you stood across a dinner table and called me a loser. And your mother said nothing. Every eye in the room slid to Elaine Parker. She froze for a moment. I almost felt sorry for her. Nearly. Tyler Vaughn spun toward her. Mom. Mom. She opened her mouth, closed it, the same silence she'd given me at Texas Roadhouse. That silence spoke louder than anything I could have said. From the side of the room, Grant Holden, Tyler Vaughn's father, let out a short laugh. This is ridiculous, he said. Family business shouldn't be aired like this. I turned to him. Then maybe family business shouldn't involve opening credit accounts in my name. That did it. The room fell silent. Elaine Parker's head snapped up. Frank. I slid one more document forward. This is a store credit account opened without my authorization. And this is another. And a short-term loan, all tied to my information. Tyler Vaughn stared at the papers like they might burst into flames. Grant Holden took a step back. I don't want any part of that. He muttered. Elaine Parker's voice shook. You didn't have to bring this here. I gave her a look. You brought it here the day you chose silence over truth. Tyler Vaughn slammed his fist on the table. You ruined everything. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move closer. I didn't take anything from you. I said. I stopped pretending it was okay to be disrespected. That's all. The hum of the ceiling fans filled the space. Someone's coffee cup rattled as it was set down too hard. No one clapped. No one cheered. They just saw him. Elaine Parker sank into a chair like her legs had given out. Tyler Vaughn stood there, breathing hard, his story unraveling in front of people he'd wanted sympathy from. I closed the folder and picked it up. I'm done. I said. I won't argue about this anymore. I walked out into the cold. The winter air hit my face sharp and clean. My breath fogged in front of me. For the first time in weeks, my shoulders dropped. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. Behind me, the door opened. Footsteps hurried. Frank, Elaine Parker said, her voice cracked. Wait. I turned. She looked smaller out there, older. You didn't have to do it like that, she whispered. I met her eyes. I did because quiet didn't work. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down at the screen, panic flaring across her face. It's Tyler Vaughn, she said. He's got nowhere to go. I nodded once. I know. As I walked to my truck, my phone buzzed. 2. An incoming call. Elaine Parker. I didn't answer the call right away. I stood by my truck in the church parking lot, cold seeping through the soles of my boots, listening to the phone buzz itself quiet in my hand. The night had dropped fast, Indiana winter doing what it does best, turning breath into fog and thoughts into something sharp. When I finally answered, I didn't say hello. Frank. Elaine Parker said. Her voice was thin, stretched tight with panic. You have to come back. He's losing it. He says he's got nowhere to go. I leaned against the side of the Silverado and looked up at the fellowship hall windows, glowing yellow against the dark. People were still inside, still talking, still processing. I'm not coming back inside. I said. You can't just leave him like this, she said. He's your family. He's your family. I closed my eyes for a moment. The word family used to mean something that kept me quiet. Tonight, it meant something else. I'm not leaving him, I said. I'm just not rescuing him. I'm just not rescuing him. She sucked in a breath. What does that even mean? It means I'll do what's reasonable. I said. I'll call a motel and pay for 2 nights. I'll give him the number for a shelter downtown that helps young men get back on their feet. I'll even drive him there if he wants. But I'm not opening my wallet again. Not like before. There was silence on the line. Real silence. Not the kind she used to hide behind. He needs you, she said finally. I opened the truck door and sat down, the familiar smell of coffee and oil grounding me. No, I said gently. He needs to learn how to stand without leaning on someone he doesn't respect. Her voice broke. And what about me? I thought about that. About the years of meals eaten in quiet. Of checks written without thanks. Of swallowing words to keep the peace. I need honesty, I said. I need to know I'm not being used. And right now, I don't have that with you. She started to cry. Not loud, just enough to let me hear it. I never meant for it to go this far. She said. I know, I said. And I meant it, but it did. We hung up a minute later. No promises, no shouting. Just the truth. Finally said out loud. I drove home, slow heater, humming radio low. The roads were mostly empty. Fort Wayne always feels smaller at night, like the town is holding its breath. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked the same as it always had. Porch light on, curtains drawn. But when I stepped inside, it didn't feel like mine anymore. Not the way it should. I packed a duffel bag. Nothing dramatic. Jeans, work shirts, toiletries, the things you need when you're done pretending a place fits. I left Elaine Parker a note on the counter. Short, clear, no blame. I'm staying elsewhere for a while. I need space to think. We'll talk when we're both ready to tell the truth. I drove east past streets I'd driven 1,000 times until the houses thinned out and the river came into view. A small rental sat near the street. Joseph, old, narrow, nothing fancy, but it was quiet. The landlord handed me a key and didn't ask questions. That first night, I sat on the edge of the bed and listened to the place settle. No TV noise, no footsteps, no phone buzzing with someone else's emergency. The next morning, I woke to sunlight coming through thin curtains. I made coffee in a chipped mug I'd picked up at a thrift store down the road. I took it outside and sat on the small front step, steam rising into the cold air. The river moved slow and steady. It didn't care about arguments or paperwork or pride. It just kept going. For the first time in years, my chest felt light. I thought about Tyler Vaughn, angry, scared, suddenly without a net. I hoped he'd figure it out. I really did. But I also knew that saving him again would only teach him the wrong lesson. I thought about Elaine Parker, about the silence she'd chosen, about the moment in the fellowship hall when it finally turned on her. And I thought about myself, about all the years I'd confused being quiet with being kind. Here's what I learned. Silence can keep the peace. But it can also teach people how to take from you without consequence. Boundaries don't make you cruel. They make you honest. If you're listening to this and you've ever swallowed words to keep things calm, if you've ever paid the price for someone else's comfort, take a moment and ask yourself who's protecting you. If this story felt familiar, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want more stories about finding your spine later in life, you know where to find me. At Christmas dinner, my dad shoved my 8-year-old daughter and said, "That seat is for my real grandkid." He turned pale when he opened the folder I brought. At the Christmas meal, my dad shoved my 8-year-old daughter. "My actual grandchild will occupy that seat. Leave." In front of the entire family, she fell to the ground, but nobody said anything. I refrained from crying. I uttered 4 words. My mother's wine glass fell. My father became pale. The worst part wasn't when my daughter's knee touched the floor. Everyone fell silent as a result. Not the typical silence that occurs when someone says, "Let's say grace." Everyone acts as though they haven't started chewing yet. This silence had the weight of a blanket. Similar to a decision. My name is Hannah. I've mastered 2 skills as a single mother. Acting like I'm all right and packing entirely too much for one trip. I used to believe that as long as I remained little enough, I could manage my family. Have enough smiles. I'm sorry for taking a breath. I was reminded once again on Christmas Eve at my parents' place that if the wrong person thinks you don't belong, keeping little still takes up too much room. It appeared as though a catalog and a nutcracker had a fistfight in the dining room. Garland on all counts. Candles with the scent of winter pine. Which is a polite term for lies and tree sap. Brooke, my sister, had insisted on identical sweaters. Of course, hers was adorable. It appeared that I had lost a wager. The sweater was designed for a kid, Brooke described as a tiny angel, and my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, kept pulling the sleeves down over her hands. Not my child, in other words. My dad held court at the head of the table using his fork as a scepter, just like he usually did. His chuckle was loud, boisterous, and a bit self-satisfied. The seat closest to Brooke, the one that everyone revered, was occupied by his daughter, Ella, the seat that consistently received the first refill and the finest plate. More than the rest of us, the seat somehow belonged to family. Ella, who is 6 years old, has large eyes, golden curls, and the ability to acquire what she wants with just a single sigh. Her nickname is Grandpa's Girl. You can actually win that title. With the cautious expression of a child who has learnt to read rooms before books, Lily observed everything. It simultaneously breaks your heart and makes you proud. Dad had been in a celebratory mood. That's the most polite way to put it. When I stepped in, he had made one of his small remarks. He remarked, "Well, look who made it." As if I had attended an uninvited party. Still, I grinned. Because when you're trained, that's what you do. Grin. Make it simple, don't explain it to him. Then he began making jokes during dinner. "Blood's thicker than eggnog," he remarked, raising his glass in Brooke's direction as if they were exchanging a personal joke. Brooke's laughter was too loud. Mom chuckled too softly. Aunt Carol chuckled as if she were compensated for it. Lily didn't chuckle. As if she had discovered that laughing might be used against you, she simply continued to fold her hands in her lap. I gulped it, timed it, and continued to look at my kid. We then reached the point where everyone acts as though it's normal because my family loves tradition. Lily picked up her small paper place card and stood up. Brooke had created them, complete with glitter. And with this tiny, optimistic smile, she made her way to the table. She had no intention of stealing anyone's crown. All she wanted was to take a seat. Before the world taught children that belonging is something you have to earn, she wanted to be included. It's almost humorous in a horrible sense that she approached the special seat because Brooke had placed her card there, not because she wanted it. As if the cosmos had a cunning sense of timing. Something in Dad's expression snapped as he saw the card, Lily's hand, and her reaching to pull out the chair. He snarled. "That seat is for my real grandkid." Lily froze. As quickly as if someone had plucked a cord, the smile vanished from her face. Dad said, "Get out," as if my 8-year-old had attempted to rob him. Then he gave her a shove. Nor a mild prod, nor a step forward. A youngster was shoved back, as if she were a problem that needed to be solved, by an adult's hand on her shoulder. Lily faltered. The rug caught her foot. I felt my stomach turn when her knee struck the hardwood. Then there was quiet. Forks stopped in midair. The napkin of someone fell. Aunt Carol oohed a little. Lily wasn't pushed to the ground like she had spilled a drink. Brooke remained still. She simply gazed as if this were a moment from a musical she might still enjoy but hadn't requested to see. Mom's expression froze. She practiced as if she had spent her entire life preparing for this precise moment. My daughter was looking up at me, not sobbing yet, but just perplexed, as if her brain was having trouble with the math. Before I knew it, I was already in motion. I assisted her in standing up. Shock was radiating through her strained body. Her knee was starting to flush. Her breath caught in short, sharp spurts. Like she was in need of something substantial, her fingers gripped my sleeve. I looked around the table. Almost 25 adults, relatives, and witnesses. Nobody got to their feet. Not a single person reached for my daughter or asked, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Not even my mom. My ears were ringing. I had a tunneling vision. Then, with crystal clear clarity, an idea came to me in the midst of that ringing. This concludes. I needed Lily to hear at least one adult in that room say something real, so I leaned in close and said, "I've got you." Then I grabbed my backpack with my free hand and reached down. I didn't say anything. I didn't request authorization. I didn't wait for someone to get a backbone. Between the cranberry sauce and the lie my parents had been feeding me my entire life, I took out a folder and placed it on the table in front of them. I said 4 things after glancing at my mom and dad. "They've serviced you." No one, not even my father, moved for a moment. Then, as with everything else in that house, his hand moved to the folder as if it were his own. He opened it. He glanced at the first page. Time seemed to stop if my mother didn't blink, and she was still holding her wine glass, frozen halfway between the table and her mouth. After that, my mother's wine glass fell out of her hands and struck the table with an ugly, piercing clink before toppling over, and my father's face lost its color. My dad wasn't pallid with rage. "How dare you be pale? Pale like terror. Pale like recognition." After that, I left with my daughter. And for the first time that night, there was silence behind me. Not with ease, but with fear. You must be aware of my life at their home in order to comprehend why I carried that folder in my backpack. As if family is a light switch, people frequently ask questions such, "Why didn't you just cut them off?" As though you could simply turn it off and move on without having to listen to their voices for the next 10 years. My sister Brooke was sunshine as a child. I was in the weather. Brooke received recognition. I was corrected. Dad's favorite tactic was to say the harsh thing as if it were a joke. Brooke received, "You're such a star." I received, "Don't be so sensitive." Brooke received, "Come sit by me." I received, "Move. You're in the way." As if it didn't matter if he smiled as he spoke. When I was a teenager, he would ask, "Where'd you get that hair?" Everyone would chuckle in the same way that they do when they're afraid of becoming the next victim. Must have been the mailman. Brooke became the evidence my dad sought, and Mom would give me that look that said, "Don't start. Don't make this worse. Don't ruin dinner." Evidence that the marriage was successful. Evidence that he wasn't being tricked. Evidence that he was the type of man who could have a daughter. I turned into the ambiguity. My father was never tested. That would have meant acknowledging that he might be mistaken. It would be much simpler to label it righteousness and punish me for the suspicion. My mother allowed him to do so. People don't comprehend that aspect until they have experienced it firsthand. Because he is cruel. A father can be cruel. A mother must repeatedly choose to watch it occur. The only person on that side who gave me a sense of belonging was my grandfather, my dad's father. He wasn't particularly warm. He was one of those traditional individuals who believed that feelings were reserved for those who had nothing important to accomplish. On my birthday, however, he would give me a pat on the shoulder, tell me, "You're smart. Don't let anyone dull that." He would also loudly order Brooke to quit spending money like it was a pastime and hand me a card with a fresh bill inside. The house changed with his passing, not out of sorrow, but with ownership. Dad started handling all of the paperwork, accounting, and decisions. There was nothing reserved for me, I was casually informed. Mom said that as if she were discussing leftovers. With her eyes fixed on the kitchen counter and her voice flat, as if she were reading from a screenplay, she stated. There was nothing set aside. Since acknowledging that my parents may judge me unworthy of honesty based solely on my appearance was the alternative, I tried to believe her. The golden grandchild, Ella, who receives the seat, the first cookie, and the special dish, was then under my care 10 days before to Christmas. I received a text from Brooke saying, "Can you watch Ella for 90 minutes? I have a work call." Yes. In the same way that I do yoga while stretching for the remote, Brooke works from home. Ella is 6 years old, and she likes me the way children like grown-ups who don't force them to try for love, so I said yes. Additionally, I still have that ancient family illness. Perhaps they'll treat me better if I'm helpful. Brooke went out. There was silence in the house. Ella engaged in doll play. Apparently, I'm more of an assistant than a member in that household, so I cleaned up the wrapping paper. On the sofa table, Brooke's laptop was closed. Sound, sleeping, naive. It's not my concern. But to Ella, it was like a dazzling, forbidden toy. She opened it as if she had done so 100 times. The screen was glowing. A password box appeared, and Ella, with her small fingers and serious expression, entered the password as if it were her name, as if it were a game. Kids don't know passwords unless someone lets them, so I froze. I reached to close it and murmured softly, "Hey, sweet pea, that's not a toy." The laptop then fully woke up at that point. My grandfather's name appeared in bold characters at the top of a PDF that appeared on the screen as if the machine had been holding its breath. My breathing stopped. I sat down because my body knew something before my head did, not because I was being nosy. This is important. I quickly and intently skimmed. Reading in this manner makes you more terrified of what you already suspect than of what you might discover. Official-looking headers, trust, and beneficiaries were among them. Then I saw it, and my throat constricted. Not a nickname, not Hannah, but my full legal name. Not another kid. My name was printed clearly and unquestionably. I slowly scrolled once again, as if the truth would vanish if I went too quickly. Half of a page, with the headline, "Distribution Summary," was displayed. I was immediately drawn to one line since it included a date that I could still clearly recall. The month after a break-in, I had requested assistance with a deposit for a safer apartment. The same month that Mom shrugged and said, "We can't." The same month that Brooke abruptly declared she was extremely fortunate and purchased a brand new SUV, Dad had chuckled and added, "You should have made better choices." I kept my eyes on that line until the numbers became hazy. Then I did the only wise thing that family had taught me to do. I snapped a picture. Only 2. Unambiguous. Have faith in the name. My name. The important part. I shut down the laptop. Ella wanted to watch cartoons. I gave her a smile as if nothing had suddenly shifted in my life. I answered, "Yes. Honey. Select one." When Brooke arrived home that evening and chirped, "Everything fine?" I replied, "Yes, because I needed time and because it's like trying to navigate a tornado with an umbrella when you're facing folks like my parents." 3 days later, I was seated across from Megan Whitmore in a tiny, competent-smelling legal office. My phone slid across the desk. Megan looked at the picture for around 7 seconds before her face altered. Not surprise, not perplexity, nor acknowledgement. The expression you make when you recognize this pattern. "If your name is on it," she calmly stated. I gulped and said, "Trustees don't get to decide you don't count." "Even so, they are free to think whatever they want." Megan interrupted. "Opinions are beaten by ink." I did not give my parents a call. Brooke wasn't consulted. I didn't make things clear. I let Megan quietly do what she does. A few days later, Megan gave me a folder, but unlike a character in a movie, I didn't open it in the parking lot. Like it was a bomb, I sat in my car and stared at it. Because it wasn't the kind that changed people's lives or was explosive. That folder sat in my backpack for days. I removed it. Return it. Took it out. Return it. Not at Christmas, not in front of everyone, I reminded myself after the holidays. Avoid being theatrical. Don't mess things up. I convinced myself that I could manage one more dinner. I assured myself that I could maintain harmony. Waiting was no longer an option once my father touched my child. In the drive, Lily was quiet, not the kind of silence where she's planning how to persuade me that dessert qualifies as a food group. As a parent, you can hear your child's tiny brain attempting to make sense of something that shouldn't have happened, which is why this kind of silence terrifies you. Her knee was beginning to swell. As if sobbing would make her a nuisance, she sniffed vigorously to keep from crying. For that, I detested them. For imparting that knowledge to her. I said softly, "Look at me, please. There was nothing wrong with you." Her gaze was fixed on the window. "He doesn't like me." My throat constricted. "That's not about you, sweetie, that's about him." Lily's voice became softer. "I'm not genuine, is that why?" It was there. Like an heirloom, the poison was passed on. I needed my hands to be steady, so I stopped the car for a moment. "No," I said, building the word into a wall. She nodded as if she wanted to believe me, as if she had to earn it. "You are real. You belong with me always." I clenched my mouth so tightly that my teeth ached as I drove the remainder of the way home. I've included the contents of the folder because I know some of you have already asked. The reward. My family doesn't deserve speeches, therefore, I didn't explain it at the table. There was no danger in that folder. Legal service was what it was. A court petition was filed to compel my grandfather's trust to be fully accounted for. Every signature, every transfer, every cash coming in and going out. It requested that the court halt future disseminations until the truth was recorded on paper so that no one could forget it. Since what I had discovered was not misunderstanding, it requested that my parents be removed as its controllers. It was a distraction. There were displays there. My name on the trust, the distribution lines that corresponded with Brooke's unexpected life miracles, and the details of the trust administrator so that no one could claim it was a fake. That cover page, too. My father turned pale because of this. Since he was aware of it. Since he was fully aware of what he had been doing. Since he was aware that I wasn't speculating. I was finished. Even before I arrived into my driveway, my phone began to ring. First, Brooke, then Mom, then Dad, repeatedly. A voicemail, part worry, half anger, was left by Brooke. "What did you do? Are you crazy? Everything is being ruined by you." Mom's message sounded like a whisper of tears. "Please, Hannah. Don't do this, please. Consider." As like my child's knee slamming against hardwood hadn't been on my mind. Dad left a chilly voicemail. "Just this, no shouting, no showmanship. Nothing from this family is being taken by you." I didn't return the call. Sometimes parenting is just knowing when to bring sugar to pain. So I made cocoa with extra marshmallows, got Lily comfy on the couch in her leggings and an old hoodie, and pressed Snorts an ice pack to her knee. Lily was nestled against my side as if she was terrified that if she moved, the world would push her again while we watched a Christmas movie on the couch. The buzzing on my phone persisted. The family group chat is going crazy. "How could you do this on Christmas, Aunt Carol?" I hardly ever spoke to my cousin. I witnessed the event. "Are you all right?" Ella was sitting in the special seat, and Brooke posted images of her with a lovely, everyday caption. After that, the smear began. "Some people will destroy a family for money," Brooke wrote on Facebook. People responded with small heart emoticons as if treachery was inspirational content, no names, but enough for everyone to point. I learned everything I needed to know about the family I'd been attempting to maintain when my aunt messaged me, saying, "You've always been dramatic, Hannah." My uncle responded, "Call your father and apologize." No one wrote, "Is Lily okay?" After that, my dad texted me once to terrify me into silence. A message that had been waiting for the most painful moment of my life, all my life, in his back pocket. "Do you want court? All right. If you're not even mine, explain to the judge why you should receive my father's estate." I felt sick to my stomach. I knew what he was attempting to do. Not because I trusted him. He wasn't protecting cash. He was standing up for his authority to punish. He also intended to try to include my daughter in it. I gazed at the text until my hands ceased to tremble. Then I whispered to myself and to Lily, who was dozing off on the couch. "He is no longer able to write our story. Megan Whitmore sent me a PDF called Response Plus Motion, 4 days after Christmas. There's nothing like discovering a document in your inbox that sounds like a science fiction sequel. The second response. Make a stronger motion. Because that's what kids do when they're trying to be brave. I was standing in my kitchen in yesterday's sweatshirt and watching Lily eat cereal as if nothing had happened. She was 8 years old. She had stopped crying. She was engaging in that silent process where kids conclude that emotions are harmful because adults behave in such a way. Once more. My phone buzzed. They went for my throat on page 2 after Megan Whitmore texted, "Open it. Call me when you're on page 2. But it's not just the actual grandchildren nonsense. Yes, it was there, bolded like a billboard slogan. They wanted the court to reject my petition and punish me for harassment and bad faith. Sanction as if I were a dog that misbehaved. My stomach dropped so much that I had to lean on the counter because I could almost hear my father narrating, "See, even the judge thinks you're dramatic." Before I could say anything, Megan called and said in a calm voice, "After watching this film and knowing how it ends, people are at ease. They will attempt to use this to question whether you are truly related. Avoid falling for the trick." My throat constricted. This is what they're actually doing. They are in a desperate situation. I swallowed when she said, "Desperate people throw sand." If he says I'm not his, should we do a test? My shame tried to crawl up my neck during the brief pause. Megan continued. Not for court. Not for them. Your name is on the trust. Trustees don't get to rewrite it based on suspicion. I looked at Lily, who was arranging her bowl and spoon with such care that it seemed as though she could control the morning if she could control the objects. I muttered, I'm not sure if I wanted the truth. That afternoon, Megan asked me to come in. She brought a printout over to me. According to her, the trust administrator provided the first snapshot. My ears pricked up when I read the top line. Principal of the trust at the death of the grandfather. $520,000. I blinked at the next line. Intended division. 40% Brooke and 60% Hannah. I reclined deeply in the chair. My portion. My voice broke. My throat was cleared. That's $312,000. After giving a single nod, Megan tapped the bottom line. $41,000 is the current trust balance. For a full second, my brain refused to accept it, as if it was waiting for someone to chuckle and say, "Just kidding. That can't be right." I muttered. Megan remained unflinching. "It's right. Now we show the court how it happened." She slid a page titled Distributions Trustee Approved across the desk. It wasn't the whole file. Just the highlights. Enough to make me sick. Not enough to pin it on paper. Not just yet. After that, I realized where my life had gone. Not in a poetic way, in a line item way. We didn't go through every single transaction because nobody needs a 90-minute documentary about my parents' creativity with other people's money. Megan highlighted the big ones, the kind that tell a story even if you don't understand. Finance. Brooke's down payment. A vehicle purchase, medical, education. The categories were almost insulting, like if you label theft family support, it becomes wholesome. They told me they couldn't help me, I said, and I heard myself the way you hear your own voice on a recording. Too calm, too controlled, like if I let the emotion out, it would drown me. Megan didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say that's awful. She didn't perform empathy. She handed me the reality like a weapon. They took money earmarked for you, she said, and spent it like a family slush fund. I looked down at my highlighted name on the trust paperwork. My name printed in clean black ink, like it had always been real, like it had always been there. And that's when my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Carol. "Why are you doing this to your father?" I stared at it and actually laughed. A single, sharp sound, because sure, Carol, I'm doing this. Not the people who moved hundreds of thousands of dollars like it was loose change. That week, snorts. Lily asked me something while I was brushing her hair. Do I have to say sorry? The question landed like a punch. Sorry for what? She stared at her own reflection like she didn't want to see herself too clearly. You mad? I set the brush down. No. I said. And I made it firm enough to become a floor under her feet. You don't apologize for someone else hurting you. Her shoulders eased like she'd been carrying that thought around in her backpack. That night, I made a decision I should have made years ago. No visits, no calls, no surprise droppies. Boundaries so hard you could trip over them. They stole my money. They don't get my daughter. 2. The first hearing happened fast. Emergency preservation. Freeze. The kind of court appearance where you don't wear your cute outfit. You wear something that says, I am here to be taken seriously, and also I own an iron. Diane Prescott, my parents' attorney, walked in like she owned the building. Miss Prescott was polished and bright-eyed, smiling with her teeth but not her soul. She argued real grandchildren. She argued intent. She argued family understanding. Megan asked for 2 things. Preserve records, freeze movement. The judge granted both and set a deadline for the full file. Every statement. Every transfer record. And the trustee approvals behind them. My father's jaw tightened. Brooke's eyes flicked to him. My mother stared at the table. On the walkout, my father finally looked at me like he was trying to decide if I was his daughter or his enemy, and I thought dryly. Bold time to start considering the relationship, Dad. Lily was quiet when I got home. Not I'm fine quiet. The other kind. The kind where a kid is trying to decide what the world just taught her. While I made dinner, she said very softly, Are we in trouble? I swallowed the rage down like a stone. No, baby. We're safe. Between hearings, the real proof started arriving. Not all at once. Paperwork arrives the way consequences arrive. Steadily, without mercy. A week later, Megan just sent me a message that said, Come in now. I sat across from her again, and she slid one page onto the desk like it was a loaded gun. Look at the approvals column, she said. I scanned down. Signatures, initials, authorizations, and then my eyes landed on it. My mother's signature. Not once, multiple times. My stomach fell. I didn't hear the next sentence, Megan said. I just stared at the ink, at the curve of my mother's handwriting, at how casually she'd signed off on it, like it was routine. I thought it was just my father. But she knew. She was aware the entire time. I refrained from crying. I felt steady. The next hearing felt like walking into a room where everyone already knows the secret. And you're the last one pretending it isn't there. Miss Prescott tried one last time to pivot to biology. Megan didn't even blink. She kept it simple. My name is on the trust. Trustees have duties. Signatures prove intent. And family rumor is not a legal defense. The judge didn't give a speech. He gave a decision. I win. My share was $312,000. The court ordered my parents to pay it back, plus interest, plus my legal costs, plus penalties, $405,000 total. My father looked stunned. Brooke went stiff. My mother didn't move at all. I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. Not happy, just lighter. Winning in court doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like your body finally lets go of something it's been clenching for years. And then you realize you don't know how to stand without it. When I got home, Lily was at the table doing homework, tongue sticking out in concentration like we were just a normal Tuesday family. Like a judge hadn't just put a price tag on my parents' betrayal. I tried to make dinner. I tried to act like I wasn't shaking. I tried to be the version of myself who believes closure is a real thing. Then I went into my room and saw the box. Small. Plain. Ugly. The paternity kit. Miss Prescott's little gotcha. Mailed to me weeks ago like a dare wrapped in cardboard. Megan Whitmore had told me flat. Firm. Don't touch it. Not for court. Not for them. Don't let them drag you into the mud and call it truth. And I hadn't. I'd let paper beat rumor. I'd let ink beat cruelty. But now the case was decided, and the question was still sitting there like a live wire. I stared at it long enough to hear my father's voice in my head. Real grandkid, real family, real. And then I thought of Lily's neon hardwood. I grabbed the box, not because I owed anyone proof, because I was tired of carrying doubt like it was my birthright. Inside, everything was neatly arranged. Of course it was. My father didn't just want to be right. He wanted the packaging to match. His sample was already included. That part almost made me laugh. Not funny laugh. The other kind. The kind you do when someone's audacity is so committed it becomes art. I didn't read the instructions. I didn't light a candle. I didn't make it a moment. I swabbed, sealed, and shoved it back into the mail like I was returning something that never should have been sent. Then came the waiting. You'd think waiting would be calm after court. It wasn't. Every day I checked for updates like a compulsive habit. Every day I told myself it didn't matter. Every day it mattered anyway. Lily kept processing in her own quiet way. The first few nights, she hovered near me, like she was bracing for another shove from the universe. Then, one evening, as I tucked her in, she said very casually, "I don't want to go there again." No tremble, no question. A decision, and something in my chest cracked open. Pride, grief, relief, all stacked together. The email came on a Tuesday because life loves dropping grenades into ordinary days. I opened it alone at my kitchen counter, read it once, twice, 3 times, like the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. Biological match. I'm his daughter. My first feeling wasn't relief. It was fury so clean it made me cold because it meant the suspicion was wrong and the cruelty was still deliberate. It meant they could have ended this years ago, with 1 test and 1 ounce of decency. They didn't want clarity. They wanted a license. So I sent the results to both of them. No long message, no explanation, no invitation to respond. Just, "You built my whole life around a lie. Here's the truth." I then blocked them. And I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, my doorbell rang, and I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there alone, hands clasped like she was about to ask for forgiveness, the way you ask for a favor. Lily was at school. God be praised. I opened the door just enough to make it clear I was listening, not welcoming. My mother's eyes were swollen. Not in a dramatic way, in a tired way, like she'd been crying at the mirror and losing. She didn't start with "I'm sorry." She started with strategy. She said, "Your father has been different." He inquired about Lily. I remained silent. She hurried on because he wanted to see her. "Now that we know, he wants to start a family. Now that we are aware. When the lab verifies your eligibility, like love becomes active, much like a subscription." After years of silence, she finally broke down, revealing the truth in the only way possible. "Too late and messy." She said, her voice trembling. "Before you were born. I had an affair with someone else. Only once. Either your father suspected it or found out. To be honest, I can't even recall which came first anymore. However, he decided that you might not be his after that. And because I was guilty, I allowed him to treat you like a question mark. I believed I was deserving of it. And in the end, you had to pay for it." She went on, "I believed I was doing what I had to do. And we can fix it now. We are able to." I waited for her to be done. Her face tensed as if she didn't understand the language, so I made it clear when I said, quietly, "No. It wasn't supposed to matter." She attempted to speak when I told her. "You were my mother whether I was his or not. And you chose him anyway." I prevented her from doing so. "Since a test indicates that Lily is real, my father no longer receives her. You don't get to come back because the story is comfortable again," I said, telling her that the only thing she was taking with her was the realization that she had been mistaken. I shut the door after that. "We're not going back, right?" Lily asked me, small and steady, that night as I sat next to her on the couch, close enough that she didn't have to be brave on her own. "No," I replied. "We're not." And it wasn't a promise this time. It was a line. The money arrived in my account 5 months later. Everything. The house was sold. The home. The one they were the sole owners of. My father used to refer to it as his legacy. When a judge orders restitution, interest, and fees, it turns out that legacy doesn't really matter. And there's nothing else to rely on. It was covered by the sale. All of the money that was stolen. Each additional dollar that the court added. I didn't cry when the wire cleared. I didn't rejoice. I closed the door after making the necessary payments to secure Lily's future. Now they're broke. We don't have to go over budget. Quite broke, borrowed, and downsized. The kind of broke that stops making excuses and family members stop phoning. We don't communicate. Not the dramatic type. The calm variety. Lily chuckles even more. She sleeps all night long. She no longer inquires about reality. She is aware of her place. My phone buzzing doesn't make me cringe. During the holidays, I don't prepare myself. Our lives are both smaller and, in some ways, much larger. Their money was lost. Their story was lost. They became unruly. I also regained my life. What do you think, then? Did I go far enough, or too far? Share your thoughts in the comments section and sign up for After My Parents Spent My College Fund on My Brother's Legal Bills, They demanded $25,000 for his rehab and I went hiking instead. After using my college funds to pay for my brother's third DUI and associated legal fees, my parents encouraged me to be thankful. I went out, made my own life, and settled my debt. Send $25,000 for his rehab or he'll die. They called years later, so I went hiking instead. Reddit, hello. My parents expected me to handle the aftermath after they spent years manipulating the world to fit my brother. At last, I moved away and started a new life. I assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. This is how it all began. Ryan is my name. Now that I'm in my early 30s, I have a reliable tech career that provides for my needs and lets me be by myself. I'm married, have a modest home, and lead a very typical life, but none of it originated in my childhood home. My family was not one to rely on, but one to survive. I discovered that early. Since I can remember, Tyler, my older brother, has been the focal point of everything. For a child like him, an ordinary morning could become a catastrophe before breakfast. Normal things for him include smashed doors, screaming tantrums, broken lamps, and school calls. He was either fighting someone or bashing holes in walls when he wasn't ranting. He was lying about something that didn't even require lying if he wasn't fighting. He was exactly that. And he was regarded like some fragile, misunderstood genius by my parents, Margaret and David. They pretended that everyone was making fun of Tyler whenever he got into trouble. He's sensitive, Margaret would remark. As though the rest of us were the issue, David added. People provoke him. In the meantime, I was a silent presence in the background. I didn't require much. Didn't make many requests. Apparently, I didn't deserve much either. I can still clearly recall when I first became aware of the difference. At the age of 7, I received a modest reading prize from my school. Just a certificate and a small ribbon, nothing special. While everyone else was being picked up, I stood by the door of the classroom. Tyler had damaged a cabinet door during a tantrum at home that morning. Margaret was therefore interacting with him. When she did arrive, she hurried by me in that impatient, clipped voice that usually conveyed the same message. She never even glanced at the ribbon in my palm, saying, "Get in the car, Ryan. I don't have time today." That kind of thing never occurred. They took place till it felt more like a rule and less like terrible timing. My experiences turned into May, followed by afterthoughts and background chatter behind whatever Tyler had ignited that week. I discovered that if I brought something home that I was proud of, I should keep it to myself because flaunting it too much only made it easier to overlook. I eventually ceased requesting their attendance. I became weary of seeing hope dissolve into shame, not because I didn't care. Somebody took note. David's older brother, my Uncle Luke. He was a mechanic who was always greasy and had a direct manner of speaking that didn't tolerate nonsense. He would nod at me when he passed by and ask, "You holding up, kid?" without seeming sorry for me. It was more like he was really curious. Luke was the only one who spoke the truth when Tyler would hurl something across the room or yell at everyone. "David, the boy's out of control," he would say. "You're not doing him any favors." David would always dismiss him with a theatrical comment about how difficult parenting is and how others don't get what we go through. Typically, Margaret would add something like, "Tyler is special. You wouldn't get it." However, one day stood out. After Tyler got into another altercation at school, David was furious with his teachers when he arrived home. Margaret drifted behind him as if tragedy were befalling them, rather than Tyler's repercussions. After taking a district-wide math test, I received a certificate. In any case, I placed it on the counter to see if anyone would notice. Without reading it, David dismissed it. Margaret didn't act at all. They chuckled when Tyler entered and boasted about hitting a child. "Not now, Ryan. Your brother is going through something serious." I genuinely laughed as if it were a humorous tale. His hair was ruffled by Margaret. "That's my boy," David exclaimed as I picked up my certificate off the ground. I realized then that I wasn't in a race with my brother. I was never going to prevail in the competition with their need to continue lying about him. Later that night, Luke arrived. He sighed after glancing at the wall dent and Margaret nursing Tyler on the couch. I hid in the garage, and he followed. "Don't let them make you small," he said. "You're not the problem here." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. However, it had never been spoken aloud by an adult before. That there was something unusual about the way my parents managed the household. They brought up that version of me, the child who discovered that it was preferable to vanish rather than challenge the household favorite. Our home felt like it was built on chaos by the time Tyler reached adolescence. There was a new mess every month. A neighbor at the door, a call from the school, and David pacing the kitchen as if his son had been singled out. Tyler wasn't the one who changed. My parents were involved. They ceased interrogating him. They stood up for him as if it were their duty. I witnessed such defense in public for the first time during a family get-together at my aunt's house. Paper plates, folding tables, children roaming about the yard. Tyler was tightly wrapped when he came. David continued to murmur, "Just be cool." Margaret watched Tyler as if she were anticipating the moment when everything would fall apart. We were together for around 20 minutes. Tyler was grounded once more, according to a cousin's prank. Tyler lost his temper. He growled and intervened, saying, "Say it again." My cousin gave a clumsy laugh. Tyler shoved him nonetheless, saying, "I'm kidding, man." One of the chairs scratched. Drink spilled. There was silence in the yard. My aunt came running over. David approached my cousin first and said, "Stop it. Watch your mouth." He yelled, "Don't provoke him. Don't provoke him." My aunt shot back, "Provoke him?" Margaret, whose voice was already shaking, slipped in behind David and said, "He shoved my kid. Tyler's been dealing with a lot. He doesn't respond well to people mocking him." Mocking, that's the name she gave it. Uncle Luke moved away from the grill and used a rag to wipe his hands. He gave Tyler one glance. "Enough," he declared. Tyler snorted. "Mind your business." "It became my business when you put hands on family," responded Luke. David became agitated. Luke said without blinking, "He's having a hard time." Margaret growled, "You know what he's having?" "No consequences." Luke nodded as if he had anticipated it. "Luke, not here." "Right. Not here. Not anywhere." Tyler smirked and walked away, saying, "That's why this keeps happening." The group attempted to resume, tense and rigid. My aunt gave me a drink later. "How's school, Ryan?" "It's good," I said. She grinned and said, "I'm doing really well." Margaret showed there right away and said, "I heard you're top of your class." "That's amazing." "Ryan's fine," she blurted out. "Easy." Like, I didn't count. He's always been easy. In the yard, where Tyler was already fighting once more, David gave a nod. The years faded into the same script after that. Tyler's the one we worry about. He's got real struggles. Fights, suspensions, pilfered goods, irate phone calls. And my parents accusing teachers, neighbors, police, and everybody else who treated Tyler like a person accountable for his decisions. Tyler discovered that he didn't need to alter. All he needed to do was wait for the story to be rewritten. My life continued to unfold on the brink. As the highest student in my class at the end of the year, I received honors. They said they would show up. That afternoon, Tyler had a problem. They failed to appear. I didn't mention the award as I walked home after accepting it. Still, Luke heard. That evening, he came over and sat at our table as if my work were important. He remarked, "You did good." My birthdays went similarly. Don't let their chaos rewrite what you earned. One year, Tyler had been angry all day, so they didn't remember until the evening. "We'll celebrate later," David replied, thrusting money at me. We didn't. I attempted to say it quietly in 9th grade. Everything seems to revolve around Tyler. Margaret's expression grew stern. David said without looking up, "Don't start, Ryan." It was cemented when I graduated from 9th grade. After my parents spent my college fund on my brother's legal bills, they demanded $25,000 for his rehab and I went hiking instead. After using my college funds to pay for my brother's third DUI and associated legal fees, my parents encouraged me to be thankful. I went out, made my own life, and settled my debt. Send $25,000 for his rehab or he'll die. They called years later, so I went hiking instead. Reddit, hello. My parents expected me to handle the aftermath after they spent years manipulating the world to fit my brother. At last, I moved away and started a new life. I assumed that would be the end of it. It wasn't. This is how it all began. Ryan is my name. Now that I'm in my early 30s, I have a reliable tech career that provides for my needs and lets me be by myself. I'm married, have a modest home, and lead a very typical life, but none of it originated in my childhood home. My family was not one to rely on, but one to survive. I discovered that early. Since I can remember, Tyler, my older brother, has been the focal point of everything. For a child like him, An ordinary morning could become a catastrophe before breakfast. Normal things for him include smashed doors, screaming tantrums, broken lamps, and school calls. He was either fighting someone or bashing holes in walls when he wasn't ranting. He was lying about something that didn't even require lying if he wasn't fighting. He was exactly that. And he was regarded like some fragile, misunderstood genius by my parents, Margaret and David. They pretended that everyone was making fun of Tyler whenever he got into trouble. "He's sensitive," Margaret would remark. As though the rest of us were the issue, David added. "People provoke him." In the meantime, I was a silent presence in the background. I didn't require much. Didn't make many requests. Apparently, I didn't deserve much either. I can still clearly recall when I first became aware of the difference. At the age of 7, I received a modest reading prize from my school. Just a certificate and a small ribbon, nothing special. While everyone else was being picked up, I stood by the door of the classroom. Tyler had damaged a cabinet door during a tantrum at home that morning. Margaret was therefore interacting with him. When she did arrive, she hurried by me in that impatient, clipped voice that usually conveyed the same message. She never even glanced at the ribbon in my palm, saying, "Get in the car, Ryan. I don't have time today." That kind of thing never occurred. They took place till it felt more like a rule and less like terrible timing. My experiences turned into May, followed by afterthoughts and background chatter behind whatever Tyler had ignited that week. I discovered that if I brought something home that I was proud of, I should keep it to myself because flaunting it too much only made it easier to overlook. I eventually ceased requesting their attendance. I became weary of seeing hope dissolve into shame, not because I didn't care. Somebody took note. David's older brother, my uncle Luke. He was a mechanic who was always greasy and had a direct manner of speaking that didn't tolerate nonsense. He would nod at me when he passed by and ask, "You holding up, kid?" without seeming sorry for me. It was more like he was really curious. Luke was the only one who spoke the truth when Tyler would hurl something across the room or yell at everyone. "David, the boy's out of control," he would say. "You're not doing him any favors." David would always dismiss him with a theatrical comment about how difficult parenting is and how others don't get what we go through. Typically, Margaret would add something like, "Tyler is special. You wouldn't get it." However, one day stood out. After Tyler got into another altercation at school, David was furious with his teachers when he arrived home. Margaret drifted behind him as if tragedy were befalling them, rather than Tyler's repercussions. After taking a district-wide math test, I received a certificate. In any case, I placed it on the counter to see if anyone would notice. Without reading it, David dismissed it. Margaret didn't act at all. They chuckled when Tyler entered and boasted about hitting a child. "Not now, Ryan. Your brother is going through something serious." I genuinely laughed as if it were a humorous tale. His hair was ruffled by Margaret. "That's my boy," David exclaimed as I picked up my certificate off the ground. I realized then that I wasn't in a race with my brother. I was never going to prevail in the competition with their need to continue lying about him. Later that night, Luke arrived. He sighed after glancing at the wall dent and Margaret nursing Tyler on the couch. I hid in the garage, and he followed. "Don't let them make you small," he said. "You're not the problem here." I nodded, unsure of how to respond. However, it had never been spoken aloud by an adult before. That there was something unusual about the way my parents managed the household. They brought up that version of me, the child who discovered that it was preferable to vanish rather than challenge the household favorite. Our home felt like it was built on chaos by the time Tyler reached adolescence. There was a new mess every month. A neighbor at the door, a call from the school, and David pacing the kitchen as if his son had been singled out. Tyler wasn't the one who changed. My parents were involved. They ceased interrogating him. They stood up for him as if it were their duty. I witnessed such defense in public for the first time during a family get-together at my aunt's house. Paper plates, folding tables, children roaming about the yard. Tyler was tightly wrapped when he came. David continued to murmur, "Just be cool." Margaret watched Tyler as if she were anticipating the moment when everything would fall apart. We were together for around 20 minutes. Tyler was grounded once more, according to a cousin's prank. Tyler lost his temper. He growled and intervened, saying, "Say it again." My cousin gave a clumsy laugh. Tyler shoved him nonetheless, saying, "I'm kidding, man." One of the chairs scratched. Drinks spilled. There was silence in the yard. My aunt came running over. David approached my cousin first and said, "Stop it. Watch your mouth." He yelled. "Don't provoke him. Don't provoke him." My aunt shot back, "Provoke him?" Margaret, whose voice was already shaking, slipped in behind David and said, "He shoved my kid. Tyler's been dealing with a lot. He doesn't respond well to people mocking him." Mocking, that's the name she gave it. Uncle Luke moved away from the grill and used a rag to wipe his hands. He gave Tyler one glance. "Enough," he declared. Tyler snorted. "Mind your business." "It became my business when you put hands on family," responded Luke. David became agitated. Luke said without blinking, "He's having a hard time." Margaret growled, "You know what he's having? No consequences." Luke nodded as if he had anticipated it. "Luke, not here." "Right. Not here. Not anywhere." Tyler smirked and walked away, saying, "That's why this keeps happening." The group attempted to resume, tense and rigid. My aunt gave me a drink later. "How's school, Ryan?" "It's good," I said. She grinned and said, "I'm doing really well." Margaret showed there right away and said, "I heard you're top of your class." "That's amazing." "Ryan's fine," she blurted out. "Easy. Like, I didn't count." "He's always been easy." In the yard, where Tyler was already fighting once more, David gave a nod. The years faded into the same script after that. "Tyler's the one we worry about. He's got real struggles. Fights, suspensions, pilfered goods, irate phone calls. And my parents accusing teachers, neighbors, police, and everybody else who treated Tyler like a person accountable for his decisions." Tyler discovered that he didn't need to alter. All he needed to do was wait for the story to be rewritten. My life continued to unfold on the brink. As the highest student in my class at the end of the year, I received honors. They said they would show up. That afternoon, Tyler had a problem. They failed to appear. I didn't mention the award as I walked home after accepting it. Still, Luke heard. That evening, he came over and sat at our table as if my work were important. He remarked, "You did good." My birthdays went similarly. Don't let their chaos rewrite what you earned. One year, Tyler had been angry all day, so they didn't remember until the evening. "We'll celebrate later," David replied, thrusting money at me. We didn't. I attempted to say it quietly in 9th grade. Everything seems to revolve around Tyler. Margaret's expression grew stern. David said without looking up, "Don't start, Ryan. It was cemented when I graduated from 9th grade. You've got it easy. Be grateful." I glanced at the folding seats as I moved across the stage. They weren't present. They were cleaning up Tyler's most recent disaster across town. They assured me that I would be all right without them. I was. However, I quit waiting at that point. I knew where I fit within that house. By the time Tyler was in high school, my parents circled him like if he were the only thing in the universe, and he generated gravity. And before they forced me there, I learned to vanish. To themselves. Being seen first was not as safe as this. A few weeks after I graduated from high school, Tyler was arrested for the third time for DUI on a Thursday night. On paper, the first 2 DUIs never stayed. In order to get them to settle for reduced penalties and second opportunities, my parents paid enough lawyers. However, he struck a parked car this time, and there were too many witnesses and too much damage for anyone to act as though nothing had happened. The house phone rang while I was working on college paperwork at the kitchen table. After answering, Margaret fell silent and then made a sound as if someone had sucked the air out of her. With trembling hands, she gave David the phone. "You've got to be kidding me," was all I heard, followed by, "My son wouldn't do that. That wouldn't be on him." He raised his voice to the point of almost yelling. Margaret was already crying when he hung up. Her words. "They're out to ruin him." However, the assessment was unambiguous. "He's not that kind of boy." Part 2. Officers discovered Tyler slurring and hardly able to stand after he smashed into a parked automobile and knocked it halfway up the curb. In his jacket pocket, they also discovered a tiny bag. The cops noted both the DUI and possession. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't someone else's jacket. It was Tyler, drunk and carrying something illegal. David refused to hear it. "Those cops planted it," he added, gesticulating in the kitchen. "He has endured years of harassment from them." Margaret held onto his arm. I watched as they rewrote reality in real time, saying, They know he has issues. They take advantage. He's too trusting. What it was, they didn't call it. A child who had never experienced repercussions eventually reached a point where the system would not tolerate such behavior. The legal bills started the following morning. Tyler struck a local company owner's vehicle, causing substantial damage. Documents about court dates, fines, and required programs piled up, along with towing and storage expenses. David tossed out figures as if they didn't exist. Margaret nodded rapidly, as though speed made the statement true. We'll get a lawyer, a real one, not some public defender trash. We'll work things out. We always do. That afternoon, I received a large envelope at home. Even before I opened it, I knew what it was. Acceptance. It was the first genuine item I had ever desired for myself. After ripping it open and reading the letter again, I had a feeling I hadn't had in years. Thrill. I carried it as I went downstairs. I got in. I said, "This is a good thing. I can now begin making plans." "So, can we look at the college fund?" The one Granny and Grandpa set up. The room fell silent. Margaret froze. David's expression changed as if I had spoken something hurtful. He sighed, a practiced sigh, and rubbed his brow. "Ryan," he murmured. "About that money." "About that money," I said. "What about it?" Margaret moved to the front. Not all at once. It's gone. Bleeding out over the years in court bills, lawyer retainers, and emergencies they vowed were just temporary until nothing remained. At first, the word didn't land. I simply gazed at her. "Gone." "How?" yelled David. "Your brother needed assistance. Legal fees are expensive." I believed him to be kidding when he said, "We had to protect him." "It wasn't your fund," Margaret harshly said. "You used my college fund on Tyler's arrests." I held out the letter and said, "It was for the family and Tyler needed it more. He wouldn't survive prison." Margaret interrupted me, saying, "I've been planning for this since middle school. Grandma told me, don't bring her into this. She didn't know what Tyler would go through. So all of it." I replied, "Everything they saved for me." David approached me as if he were about to give me a lecture. "You're smart. You'll be fine. You'll get scholarships. You'll work. Real life isn't handed to you. But Tyler gets everything handed to him." Margaret's expression contorted as I said this. She used the word proud. "Don't talk about your brother like that. You should be proud we kept him safe." I'm glad they drained my only safety net since Tyler was unable to maintain sobriety long enough to avoid a crime. David shook his head as if I had let him down. Family takes over. I won't argue. Something clicked for me at that moment. You ought to want to assist. Every time they told me to be the easy one, every missed occasion, every birthday that was disregarded. Everything came to this point. Tyler wasn't the first to arrive. The only person who ever counted was him. I didn't shout. I refrained from arguing. I went back upstairs, picked up 2 bags, packed them with what I needed, and descended again. Margaret gazed at the bags as if incredulously. She said, "Where are you going?" "Somewhere that isn't here." "Ryan," David growled. "Don't be dramatic," I said, but I had already started to go. Outside, Luke appeared to have been waiting, leaning against his truck with his arms folded. He must have received a call, or perhaps he simply understood how our family's evenings like these ended. "You're done, huh?" he asked after glancing at the bags. "Yeah," I replied. He put a wad of bills, possibly a few hundred, into my hand after reaching inside his pocket. He motioned toward the house and said, "Take it. Get yourself set up somewhere. And listen to me, kid. You didn't break this family. They did." As I walked away, I didn't turn around. Nothing worth examining was present. I took 2 bags and enough money from Luke to buy food for maybe a week when I left my parents' house. Even though I had no knowledge how to live, I could rent a place because I was 21. I had no strategy. All I needed was some distance. A shared house on the outskirts of town was the most affordable option I could find. I had never met these 3 guys. We are all renting rooms in a place that is only kept together by good fortune and duct tape. The bathroom door hardly shut. The kitchen sink was always leaking. The living area also had that outdated takeout smell. Even if my room was too small to accommodate a folding table and a mattress, it was still mine. In less than a week, I was hired at a petrol station. It was difficult to deal with minimum salary, alternating shifts, and a manager who behaved like a shelf stalker. I didn't voice any complaints. For the first time, I felt like I was the only one who could save my life. Even though the rent was low, I was still barely getting by. On certain weeks, I would see single-digit figures when I opened my bank app. I started regularly incurring overdraft fees as a result of making incorrect assumptions about my financial situation. The food was easy. $2 pre-packaged entrees, instant noodles, and whatever was on sale at the end of the week. I traveled everywhere by bus. The final bus home would sometimes fail to arrive. In the hopes that no one would follow me, I would walk back to the house for 40 minutes. I discovered how to stretch every dime till it broke. A few months later, I started working extra hours in a warehouse, loading trucks, stacking pallets, and doing whatever needed to be done. Although the pay was slightly higher, the labor left my hands and back hurting. I would wipe the dust and perspiration off when I got home, and as soon as I touched the mattress, I would fall asleep. The roommates were of no assistance. One man consumed everything that was left in the refrigerator. Playing loud games until 2 in the morning was another. We all had the same objective, but the third continued to smoke inside despite our protests. Make it through the month and pay the rent on schedule. That was sufficient to maintain harmony. I learned how to create a budget by repeatedly failing. After overspending, I would survive on peanut butter sandwiches until I got paid. I would have to forego a transit pass, pay a fee, and forget a bill. I gradually began keeping track, but it took effort, blunders, and silent frustration. There was a rigorous list tacked to the wall, a notebook, and a cheap calculator. Every 2 weeks, Luke came to see how I was doing. "You eating?" he would ask, glancing at my worn-out sneakers as he drove by in his truck. I would nod. He never gave lectures. He would give me tools and demonstrate how to extend, repair, or patch things. He helped me change hoses and belts in the driveway for an afternoon after I finally paid several $100s for a junky old car. I was able to get to work without using the bus, even though that automobile shook at every signal. I began to think about education once more after barely making ends meet for nearly a year. In a sea of misfortune, the acceptance letter had been the one bright spot. Even though I no longer had a college fund, I still desired an alternative to carrying pallets or swinging a mop at 3 in the morning. Instead, I applied to a community college. Realistic, nearer, and less expensive. I wrote essays for scholarships, saved every additional dollar from working overtime, and completed financial assistance forms on a loaned laptop. It was like a door opening when the permission emails arrived. To begin, I signed up for a couple classes. Just enough to test my ability to mix it with work, nothing substantial. My days became roughly structured. Morning at the warehouse, afternoon at the gas station, evening class, home, study, sleep, repeat. Written down, it sounds awful, but it wasn't. I had a direction that wasn't determined by the mess of others for the first time in my life. Tyler continued to plummet in the meanwhile. Through Luke or my neighbors, I would learn about him. New charges, another crash, more battles. David and Margaret never altered their opinions. They made a few calls to me, always using the same strategy. Just guilt, no hello, no check-in. Margaret would remark, "Your brother is going through something tough," adding, "You should come home and help," David said. What is the help? Soothe him? Make a payment? As they acted as though he was all right, they sat in the background. After a while, I stopped responding. Every time I picked up, Tyler was the topic of conversation. They would send lengthy texts accusing me of deserting the family if I didn't. They never once inquired about my well-being. But I was no longer in need of them. That was the distinction. Things gradually stabilized with work and school. I made my rent payment on schedule. I gained real cooking skills. Vegetables, rice, and eggs from the bargain store. I learned how to handle my finances, fixed my own car, and determined which expenses were important and which weren't. I owed no one anything, but I also didn't have much. There were evenings when I sat at my small desk with my textbooks open and the house a flurry of activity all around me. And I came to a realization I had never experienced as a child. I was constructing something. Small, rough, shaky, but mine. I wasn't attempting to survive someone else's mess for the first time in my life. At last, I was creating my own life. One class and one shift at a time. I worked through all of it, so it took me longer than the 2 years required to finish community college. But in the end, I left with a transcript I was proud of and an associate's degree. After that, I transferred to a 4-year institution. Although it wasn't a well-known school, it was reliable, reasonably priced, and convenient enough for me to continue working weekends at the gas station and part-time shifts at the warehouse. On paper, my schedule seemed absurd, but by that point, I knew how to endure long days. Luke continued to stay in touch and would always be there to assist me with practical matters. Repairs for cars, apartment moves, and even minor tasks like changing a broken lock. He never gave it any thought. He would give me a tool and say, "Figure it out." After that, he would take a step back and let me figure it out. It was the first parenting style I had ever witnessed that truly entailed imparting knowledge. I met Ruby during my final year of college. During the extra hours they provided for students in need of money, I worked at the front desk of a campus building. One evening, she asked me the location of a particular lecture hall, and I gave her the answer. It wasn't impolite, but she hesitated before leaving and remarked, "You look exhausted." Long day. Lying was useless because of the way she looked at you. We kept bumping into each other, so I laughed and said something like, "Long month." She would bring an extra cup of coffee, study in the same building, and give it to me without asking if I wanted one. We struck up a conversation in between my shifts. Simple. Everyday talks, nothing dramatic. It felt weird just that. Someone being interested in me without wanting anything was something I wasn't used to. She didn't seem impressed or sorry for me after learning that I was working 2 jobs and attending school full-time. "You know, you don't have to downplay that, right?" she asked. It was the first time I had been called out for dismissing my own work. Following graduation, I secured my first full-time position in a manufacturing company's mid-sized IT department. Although the compensation wasn't great, it was in line with real weekends and health insurance. Luke's version of congrats was, "Good. Now, you can finally stop buying garbage tools." I texted him the news. Around that time, Ruby and I began dating more seriously. She assisted me in creating a budget that didn't depend on hasty decisions. She forced me to apply for jobs for which I didn't believe I was qualified. She didn't mince words when I had self-doubt. She would say, "Stop selling yourself short." It was the most direct thing anyone had ever said to me. The following year, we moved in together. It wasn't a significant choice. Splitting the rent made financial sense, because we were already spending the majority of our time together. In a way that didn't seem like drowning, she helped me restructure my student loans, set up auto pay for bills, and arrange my papers. I took care of the food, the repairs, and the errands. It was successful. In the end, I made a proposal. A peaceful evening at home, a ring I had saved for, and a moment that seemed right, nothing dramatic. She grinned as she glanced at the ring. "Took you long enough." We were able to purchase a modest starter home with 2 incomes and careful saving. It wasn't elegant. It was ours, despite the little yard, threadbare carpet, and older siding. We replaced light fixtures and painted walls over the weekend. Ruby made her small reading nook. In the spare room, I put up a little desk. After helping us mend a loose railing with a toolbox, Luke stayed for dinner. During the first week, Luke visited. "You bought a house with loose railings and a crooked porch light," he stated. Ruby chuckled and said, "Good means you didn't overpay." Translation: "He is pleased with us." Luke let out a grunt. "Sure, that too." Despite everything, I continued to make consistent student loan payments. The balance decreased slightly each month. Ruby joined me in celebrating my victories, no matter how minor. I wasn't prepared for it to hit so hard when I paid the final payment. "Debt-free" was written in slightly crooked icing on a plain cake that Ruby made. We ate cake right out of the pan while seated at our kitchen table. And for the first time in my life, I thought I had arrived at a firm foundation. Margaret and David began to reappear around this time. Their communications had a distinctly different tone. Overly pleasant, overly courteous, as if they were making an excessive effort. Margaret replied, "You've built such a nice life." David texted me to ask if I wanted to stop over soon. "We're so proud of you, Ryan." The biggest red flag was that they failed to mention Tyler. Whenever my parents avoided discussing him, it indicated that there was a problem. After reading their words, Ruby was correct when she declared, "They want something." I had never received a check-in call from my folks. The warmth wasn't the friendliness. It served as bait. I could sense the hook approaching even though I didn't know what it was yet. I was unfazed by whatever was waiting, though. The one person who had always been honest with me, Luke, was still at my side, and I had a degree, a reliable job, a home, and a marriage that truly felt like a partnership. I had a foundation constructed all by myself for the first time in my life. And they had no involvement. Ruby and I were finishing supper on a random Tuesday night when the call came. Margaret was on the screen when my phone chimed. It had been years since I had heard her voice. Ruby's eyebrows went up. "Are you going to answer?" "Yeah," I replied. Margaret didn't even greet them, saying, "Let's see what they want." "Ryan. It's your brother," she said without thinking. Her voice was urgent and piercing. "He needs help again. It's serious this time." David's voice broke through the background before I could respond. I entered the corridor and said, "Tell him to stop dragging his feet. We don't have time for this." Margaret sniffed sharply. "What's going on?" When she desired something, she would cry like this. "Tyler is struggling. He's been through so much lately." "That's not an answer," I replied. David reached for the telephone. "Listen, Ryan, there's a facility, a really good place, 9-month program, cost $25,000. We need you to cover it." I silently chuckled. "Because you can," David said. "Why would you think I'd do that? You've got a house, a good job, a stable life. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your family." "Oh, we said to who? For what?" Margaret's voice came back out of nowhere. "To us," she added. "We raised you. We supported you. Your life turned out well because we gave you structure." I was staring at the wall. "Structure?" "Yes," the woman replied. "We made sacrifices for Tyler." I clarified. She refused to admit it. "Family helps family. Ryan. You didn't help me," I said. David's tone changed from entitled to annoyed as he said, "Not once. Don't start rewriting history. You're doing well now. You can afford to help your brother. $25,000 is not helping. That's a bailout. He needs you." Margaret begged. At that moment, I heard my phone ring with notifications and voicemails from Tyler, saying, "He won't survive without treatment." Margaret continued talking, one after the other. "If you don't step up, he could hurt himself." I heard one of Tyler's texts before responding. "Ryan, man, just help me, dude. You don't get it. Everything sucks right now. Mom and Dad said you would help. Come on, don't leave me like this." Another message. "You think you're better than me? You're not. You had everything handed to you. I should have gotten that money. Not you." A third time. "I swear I'll do something stupid if no one helps me. Is that what you want? Is it?" It was anarchy. Blaming, threatening, and pleading all at once. Typical Tyler. I returned the phone to my ear. Margaret gasped as if I had admitted to a crime when I said, "I'm not paying for rehab." David began to raise his voice, saying, "How could you say that? He's your brother. You selfish little. After everything we did for you. This is how you repay us." "What exactly did you do for me?" I inquired. "Name one thing." A long pause. Then David lost it.